interactive storytelling. I'll switch whenever I feel like it. What is interactive storytelling? Best slides ever. Anybody has any idea what I mean by this, or what your vision is of interactive storytelling?
The reader is also part of the storyline.
Yeah, yeah,
That we put kind of vowels in it.
yeah. Right. So it's the difference, I think, or the distinction would be between interactive storytelling on one side and linear storytelling on the other side. Where linear storytelling is no matter how many times you read the book, always the same thing is going to happen. Like the guy's always going to fall in the puddle or whatever. But if you do it with interactive storytelling, there might be ways that you can work around that by allowing your persona or your character to do something else. And there are a couple of definitions. So a form of entertainment in which the storyline is not predetermined. Now, I like this idea of predetermination because at some point, of course, the story is determined, or I would say all the parts are determined, but not necessarily the whole process or everything. By which I mean that you still have to set the bounding box for the whole environment, right? It's not a story that can do everything everywhere all the time, although we'll get to that because that's also an interesting prospect and that we're facing, and that's coming up at least. Another part of that definition could be that the user experiences a unique story based on their interactions with the story world. So what they do is different from what somebody else's experience is with that same story. In that sense, something like Minecraft, for example, would also apply, where the storytelling is actually just the way that you experience the game itself. By playing it, you encounter situations that nobody else encounters because of basically randomness. That's not really like the storytelling then happens mostly in your head, but it's a way that you can think of that as well. One of the very, very early games that used this approach is this game. Are people that recognize this format at least? I see Ezra nodding his head, of course. The idea, this is called what's called a text adventure game. So the idea is that you type in, or you get a situation, and like you are standing in an open field west of the White House with a boarded front door. There is a small mailbox here. And of course, that sounded interesting already because the scene is set. And now you can start typing commands. You can start influencing the world by typing commands that you then execute as your character. So you can do examine mailbox. And so the small mailbox is closed. Okay, right? Next step seems logical. Open mailbox, right? And it says open the small mailbox reveals a leaflet. So every step, every piece of that story actually gives you a little snippet, a little way to continue. So it says get leaflet. Okay, take it. What would be the next command that you type after this? A leaflet, brochure. Read leaflets, yeah, something like that. So you would want to know what's on there, right? You just took it, so you probably want to know what's on there. So this game also has this idea of this inventory of things that you store in your bag or in your rucksack, whatever you have. That's not really specified. In some games you can carry just insane amounts of stuff. In other ways, in some other games that's limited as well. But things like a leaflet, you take it and then you hold it with you, and then you can drop it later somewhere else, or you can give it to somebody if that's necessary. So, and that's all the part of the game. So you move around the world by typing commands: go north, go east, go south, open door, walk through door, that sort of thing. And then the game responds by giving you clues or meeting characters, visiting places, things like that. But everything happens through text. There's no visuals at all. That's the whole game. This seems weird, right? For some people, it's like, is this a game? But this is really fun actually, because all the graphics card is in your head basically. It's your head making the graphics, which makes some of these things very powerful because it's just like a book where the imagination engine is also in your head. It's just a description. And Zork is really famous because the way that it was set up was used a really powerful system where the commands could actually be quite complicated, the commands that you gave to the system. It had a lot of leeway in what it can understand. You could say get leaflet, but also take leaflet, take the leaflet, grab the leaflet. And so all of these variations, they would program in so it would work. What's also remarkable about this, I think at least, is that they not only made this game, but they made it in terms of an engine. And that's also something that we'll explore today. You could think of that as, and maybe this is already way too complex right now, but it's interesting to hint at it. Within these projects, you always have this distinction between, okay, what happens in the code? So what's the logic, the flow of this? It's basically putting this character on the screen, allowing people to type things. And then if they press enter, you start evaluating that command and doing something like that. That's one aspect of it, but that happens wherever you are in the world. That's the same process, right? Wherever you are in the world, you type something, you press enter, and something needs to happen. That's the code. But then what they did was really smart, is they also took the data of the world, so the map of the world, or the description of all these places and what could happen and all these actions, and they put that in this sort of mini database that actually contained the whole game, which meant that they could use that same engine to make different games, and people did. So people used the same engine to make games that were different. Well, it's still text games, of course, but they would use the same approach. So the thing that happens in code, the engine, and the world that you explore are two different things. Of course, they meet in the middle, but by disconnecting them, by separating them, it means that you can have a very powerful system that can do the two things with multiple worlds. So you can have multiple worlds being evaluated within that world or played within that world. And that's already, for a game that was made in 1981, a very powerful principle. At some point, you get to these games. Are people familiar with this? No? These are also adventure games, with more of the point and click type. This is a horrible game, this game. I died so much in this game. It's also not really fun. But it's very famous, and that's this company called Sierra made a lot of these games, Space Quest and King's Quest and whatever. And so what you had to do is basically walk around the world and find objects that you need and interact with them. So you take an object from here, you give it to somebody else, it gives you something you return. Then it allows you to fight that demon there, and then whatever. And basically, you're stranded in this world and you have to escape. That's the main goal. You see that you also get a score, so some of the things you get a score for. The problem with games like Space Quest is they made it really hard to get stuck in this game, because of nonlinear storytelling. Of course, the players are free to do things in the order that they want, or often, and also not do certain things. And so this game rewarded you by death. It just made you die. And so there were like 50 ways that you could die in this game, which is not really fun, I guess. And you had these other games, which is this one, which is my favorite, Monkey Island by LucasArts. And this game actually made a point out of it that you could not die, never. So there was always a way out. You could never get stuck or something. Even if you landed with a big iron thing attached to your feet at the bottom of the ocean, you could still escape. There were still ways to go around there. And this game is really good because, one, the storytelling is great. It's really funny. And also the graphics were really high tech, I would say, in that area. It just fits together. But one of the problems with these games, I think, also is the hunting, or what they call pixel hunting, where you have this tiny object. Maybe you have this little doorknob, and it's only these 4 pixels that you can click. And if you don't know that you have to click these 4 pixels, then you can never open that door, which means you can never visit the sorcerer and you can never continue your game. So oftentimes it's really, you really have to be precise or look it up, what you actually have to do. This is really fun, and if you can still play it. They also use the system of separating out the engine from the world itself, and you can still find this game and play it, and it's amazing. Then there's this game, and I think this fits more into this idea of the nonlinear narrative, which is called Facade. And I'll show you a video of that game. And the game is really about this visit that you make to a couple. You go visit them in an evening, like a cozy evening with a couple, and it sort of goes wrong from there. The graphics are not really to write home about, but it's really about the way that the game is structured and the way that it's is made is really well done, because there's a lot of options that you can do within that game.
Hey there, it's Trip. It's wow, it's been a while since we all but why don't you come over tonight? Grace and I we'd love to see you. So yeah, just come on over around 8. It'll be fun. Can't wait to see you.
Andrew! I'm so happy you could make it. We haven't seen you in so long. How's it going, man?
So you type as well, but the characters respond with text.
Oh, we're great. I mean, really, really great. Come on in.
Andrew, hi, how are you? Oh, it's so nice to see you. It feels like it's been forever.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I just asked him that.
Well, I can ask him too.
Oh, and I've got to say, you look really good.
Well, it's funny how after a full day's work designing magazine ads, Grace finds the time to decorate and redecorate.
I guess it's just the artist in me dying to get out. Andrew, you know that flirting with me is only going to make me wish I'd married you instead of Trip.
Okay, that's enough, you two lovebirds. Okay, Andrew, I think this evening is over. You've got to leave. There's only so much you can expect to put up with, you know? Oh, no. Andrew, I just realized. I'm sorry.
What?
I haven't gotten us drinks. When it comes to drinking, I have the simplest tastes. I'm always satisfied with the best. So, what's your poison? Can I interest you in a single malt scotch? It's primo. I served them at our last party. They were a smash. Martinis. Perfect. Classic. Great idea.
Well, it didn't take long for you two to bond or whatever. Trip thinks he's at his classiest when he's on the serving end of a swizzle stick.
Why don't I make us one of my new drink inventions? I call it Grace's Inner Soul. It's a mixture of Chardonnay, bitters, and lots of ice. Now, Andrew, in one word, what does this picture say to you?
Say to you. Yes, good question.
Grace stayed behind in the hotel room when I was out taking this picture, so... Well, actually, this trip to Italy was meant to be our second honeymoon.
Oh, was that what it was? Huh. I'm always the last to know.
Grace, I wanted us to spend some time together. So, in a word, this says... romance. No, it says romance.
Romance? In our marriage, that's just a code word for manipulation.
Grace, it's been such a long time since we had a chance to...
You planned that trip without even asking me if I wanted to go.
Okay, I'm really sorry I dragged you off to Italy, Grace. My God, what is going on with you two tonight?
Trip, I don't...
Oh, no, don't let me get in the way. I'll leave you two to continue.
What? Where are you going?
Oh, don't mind me. I'll just be in the kitchen.
You know, you don't have to tell me that things aren't perfect. I mean, you can't tell me that every marriage is perfect.
You maniac, you sex maniac. Never afraid to push our little buttons.
Andrew, it's time that Tripp finally
Grace,
just admits
don't.
that our
No,
marriage
you don't need to.
admits that our marriage
Stop
is not.
it. Stop it.
Do you really want the honest truth, huh?
You're saying I caused all this? I what, screwed up somewhere along the line?
In college, I was in love with someone else.
What? Grace? I've been having an affair.
I jinxed our marriage, Tripp. I jinxed it. I'm sorry. You manipulated me.
Yes.
And I never did anything about it. And here we are.
Marriage is a wonderful institution. But who wants to live in an institution? Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, amazing game. You can also play it. It's really fun because it's like the thing where you can ask for a martini and it just tells you. It's amazing the amount of work that they put in so you can have all these options and just mess with the story as you're playing along. And just not follow the script at all. Of course, there are still some lines in there, but later on we'll explore a game very later at the end actually that has like the God machine is basically what it is. Another thing that I want to show you is this. Are people familiar with these? Ezra? Yeah?
Yeah, I read some of these.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I never read those, but we had them in Belgium as well, the choose your own adventure games. And the idea is that you read a chapter, and at the end of the chapter, it asks you to make a choice. And then if you choose to, you're like in a forbidden place, and if you choose to go back, you turn to page 15, and if you choose to continue, you go to page 73, and then that continues the story, and then you can keep reading from there. It's actually a really interesting concept because, of course, it's quite complicated to do that. There's no, like the way that the whole thing matches up is actually quite well thought out. And sometimes you go back to these paths that you were before, but oftentimes you have to read the book multiple times to actually explore the whole story, which is kind of fun.
Really subtle titles like "You're Going to Die." You
Yeah.
are a shark.
Yeah, it's pretty thrown. I would read one of those, The Cave of Time. Yeah, and they also hint at the amount of possible endings that they have. It's like it's a feature. 30 possible endings, 14 possible endings, 40 possible endings. Yeah, really cool. And that brings us a little bit to this aspect that I want to talk about, which I think is really crucial in understanding interactive storytelling and nonlinear narrative, and which is its idea of hypertext. And I think we're all familiar with hypertext because this is basically the basics of the web, right? That's the way that it started. So hypertext is text displayed on a computer display or other electronic device with references called hyperlinks to other text that the reader can immediately access. Now, for us, this doesn't seem strange anymore because we know what this is, right? This is our very, very basic idea of the web page. But back when this was created, this was really a revolutionary concept because otherwise you would just have books which were linear or papers or reports that were all linear. And so the idea of hypertext is that you could have this non-linear, non-hierarchical structure within your text that would allow everybody to link to everything. And of course, again, we're really familiar with this concept now through the web. But this actually, hypertext, or the idea of hypertext, actually predates the web. It was the use of hypertext that actually made the web what it is, this choice. So we know this, how it looks, or conceptually how it looks, but this is an important graphic to keep in mind when we're building our nonlinear story as well, because that's the way that works. And that's the way these choose your own adventure stories also work, which is that you have all of these different chapters, all of these different parts of the story, and they're interconnected in different ways. One thing that it's also adding in games, or that we can add in games, is this other concept that we don't see in hypertext, which is this concept of state, which means that we carry something along with us, or we did something. For example, we could have an inventory with us with things that we took from our game, or we can have a thing that we did somewhere. So we went into a village and we pillaged the whole village and we burned down their houses. The people in the village next over probably will know and treat us differently. So it's not just because we jump from thing to thing that the whole world suddenly forgets about us, but there's this idea of state, this memory of what we did in the world that might be important as well when we're building these worlds. And we'll also get to them. And so hypertext then is text, of course. This is the way that text works, but we can go beyond that by looking at hypermedia. And hypermedia is basically the same idea as hypertext, but then having, instead of text linking to each other, we have media linking to each other. And by media, I mean everything in the broadest sense. So it could be images, it could be video, it could be interactive elements and animation. It could be actually text. All of these things can be linked together as this non-linear connected story. And this is really crucial in whenever we make these interactive storytelling experiences. And the idea of hypermedia is that it's a non-linear medium. So the participant defines the order that things happening. And it can include all of these things: graphics, audio, video, text, hyperlinks, animation, all of these things. And it's no secret I'm a fan of hypercards. People who have Zoomed with me have seen this box in the background a lot of times. But hypercard actually predates the web, and that's why I think it's interesting. It's from 1987, which was before the web was created. And this actually had this full idea of hypermedia already integrated with it. And that's why I think it's an absolutely genius program. Even though it looks dated right now, a lot of the features that are in there are still not on the web because it was made so well. It's really amazing to see what's all in this application. So the basic of HyperCard is that it would treat what we now see as a site, they would call a stack. And this was based on this idea of the Rolodex. And it's interesting because we don't actually know what a Rolodex is anymore. So the metaphor that they used doesn't work for us anymore because we don't know what it is. But you can think of it as a stack of cards, basically, like index cards. You know what an index card is? So you have these cards, maybe they're a bit smaller. Basically this size. And this was used, you can see it like in television programs where they hold these cards. It's basically the idea. You have these cards and the stack is basically this collection of cards. That was the metaphor they used. This is really key. And so on each card, what you can see here, you have these buttons, and these buttons can do a couple of things. They can play sounds, they can start a movie, they can show something on this card, but they can also move to another card. And that doesn't have to be the next card, it can be any card in the system. And on that next card can also be new graphics, new video, new sound, all of these things. And so with that simple system, that simple metaphor of having a stack of cards where you can jump between these cards and also hold state with or keep memory between these cards, you can actually make games, right? Because you can indicate your button can be an invisible button that actually refers to a door or something or a hallway. And then you click that invisible button and then you go to the next card, which is like you're going into that hallway. That's the main idea. That's what we're going to do. So I want to show this amazingly updated video of HyperCard where they interview Bill Atkinson, who's the maker of HyperCard. They say that the idea of HyperCard came to him when he was doing LSD, so that might be part of it. But it's the way that he describes it is really interesting. So let's watch it.
Would you tell us what HyperCard's all about, Bill?
Well, really simply put, HyperCard is a software erector set. It lets non-programmers put together interactive information.
Mm-hmm.
Show us how you actually do this, Bill.
You use cards that contain graphics and text and buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Here I've got a stack of cards and I can press on this button and it will take me to another card.
Okay, that button's particular function is get to the next card.
Right.
Exactly.
You can have lots of buttons to do different things.
Okay.
Buttons can do things like dialing the phone and taking you to cards and lots of different
Whatever
things.
you tell it to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
The cards are grouped together into stacks that you put on a floppy disk and can share with somebody else. And you can organize it so that any card can jump to any other card.
Is this where you get that notion of hypertext built into the HyperCard system?
Yeah, it's kind of the freedom to organize the information according to how things are associated with each other, not just according to the next card in the list.
Right, okay.
The buttons, as I said, can do lots of things. Here's one that makes a noise and sounds. And you can have lots of different kinds of cards. The standard 3x5 card is a little weak metaphor, but you can include things like an expense report or maybe an appointment book, things like that. Lots of different kinds of things can be on cards. Even little interactions. Here's a little keyboard that you could click on, and it makes sounds and moves the note.
Yeah. So again, in that time is completely revolutionary. Remember, the web isn't there. You really had to physically mail floppy disks to people to actually get information from one place to another. But the amount of things that it could do, remember, at that time, computers that were running PCs were actually running DOS. So everything was like very clunky in typing commands. So seeing this in that time was absolutely revolutionary. He actually used this metaphor of the software erector set. Do people know what that means? Erector set? So the idea is basically like Meccano or Lego blocks, is that you can build software out of these simple concepts. You don't have to be a programmer to do that. You don't have to invent or cast metal to actually build your system. You can just build it out of these components that are already there for you, like graphics, like buttons, like these interactions that you can do really simply with this simple programming language that was in there. And people did, so this was very widely used, and also it was used in games, to make games. And I want to show a couple of games and also show you the evolution that you can see immediately in this game. So as you can see here, everything's black and white. So the first monitors that they had were black and white, because that's the only monitor that they could use to have a high quality image. They could do color, but the color was very limited and very blurry, so you couldn't actually read the text. So that's why they choose black and white initially. So the first game I'm going to show is actually a black and white game that uses HyperCard to actually link these different parts of the story together. Right? So think of this, you can look at it as a story, but you can also look at it as we're exploring this interactive stack of cards, basically, which is what this game is. But you can see that there's much more going on than just cards. So there's music, there's animation. So that becomes an invisible button that you can now go to. There's a Macintosh, which actually has the game itself, so nicely recursive. It has HyperCard. I love these transitions as well. Dithering, gathering, lots of dithering. So you can enter the hallway and you see these nice transitions between these different things. You can click on stuff. I'm not sure what that is actually. But basically, you're in a spaceship and you're traveling around, and there's a kitchen in there. Yeah, and as you can see, you can open the fridge. So there's all of these expectations that you would be able to do in the world, you can actually do. And even though you can't actually take a pot or a pan, it sort of makes a noise to indicate like, okay, I understand your command, I know what you're doing, and I've given you a reward by playing a sound or whatever. Even though it's very primitive in its looks, I think it's amazing in the amount of interaction that it enables just by using this simple system. And then the next game that actually takes the same principle by the same company, actually, a couple of years later, that actually uses HyperCard, but then on color displays, is a very famous game which is called Myst. Are there people familiar with Myst? Is it all? Other people? you've played it? No. So again, an adventure game, but really nice to explore. So you come into this world and you can start exploring around, walking around. You can look around you as well. You can open doors, go into corridors, and it's all very mysterious. What's actually going on and what happens if you click these buttons. So yeah, so this is the end of the movie, but the game is really about exploring this unknown world where you don't really understand the concepts of it or what it is about, and you trying to understand what the world is and solving it through puzzles is actually what the game is about. It's really well put together. They made a couple of follow-up games for that, which are also really good, like Riven, which is also one of my favorites. But it's nice to see that they used HyperCards again. So this, even though it doesn't look like it at all, like the thing we saw 2 slides before, it's still using that same principle. And actually, in this case, the same software even, where they integrate QuickTime movies so you can see these small animations playing and things like that. So the world is 3D rendered, but the export that they do is actually images, right? So it's not a real-time 3D rendered world. They just render out these different layers or the different images from that world from different standpoints. And then they put them together in this huge, huge map. And this is one for children. There are a lot of these. This is also made with the same principle. This is called Living Books. And that's really the idea. So the storyline is linear. You can't influence the story here, but there's lots of things going on the page that you can actually explore.
This is the story of the tortoise and the hare. The tortoise was a friendly fellow who moved at his own slow pace.
Good morning, birds.
The hare was a busy person who was always on the move.
So now you can just start clicking on everything. Everything works.
Hey, wake up!
Was I snoring?
What?
Yeah, and so every page has these tens of interactions that you can explore and just go through. It's really fun to do, and it's still fun. I still do this with my kids, even though it looks old. It's just fun to sort of click at everything and explore it. Again, using that same principle of hypertext, where everything basically becomes an invisible button, like the newspaper. There's basically an invisible button around it where it allows you to click and play this animation. All right, then I want to show you, so these are all quite old examples, obviously, but I want to show what's happening right now on the web. Now, these are things, I should warn you, that are really like state of the art. These are not things that we're going to make all today because they require a bit more information than we can do in 3 hours. But I want to show you just to let you see what's out there. And the first one that I want to show is the boat. which is a project about Vietnamese immigrants based by a New Zealand TV station called SBS. So this is a website, so you can click it. Let's put that full screen. So and this is already a little bit interactive, so you can move your mouse around and you can see the world moving a little bit. But then the biggest interaction here, so the story is linear, but you can scroll through it actually. This is really a storytelling. So it's talking about the wind, it's talking about the boat, like that it's supporting, it's talking about this woman, this part of it. And so as you're reading the story, you see that the thing just moves just as the boat itself. So you see that it goes around. It's way more dynamic than this reading story. And it's about the boy, so he's traumatized, the storm. She being alone. Note that the music itself also changes as we scroll around. So the music is basically this infinite soundscape that the moment that we scroll and it sort of immerses into this different soundscape, which is very common in games. It's quite hard to do on the web as well. And then the whole thing is divided into these chapters, so we can sort of also explore this chapter. We're not going to explore the whole thing. It's really nice to see this experience. And a lot of it is parallax, but also a lot of it is really, really well put together. So that's the boat. Another one that I want to show you is this one called Nomadic Tribe. What separates these from the things that I saw before is that a lot of these actually use WebGL, so they use 3D animation, even though it might look 2D. They use 3D graphics to actually render this. So here you can enter.
Today is a big day for our tribe. The year ends. It is time to leave the island. A year has gone since we set foot on this island.
Yes, you can move.
We witnessed the birth of every plant, the growth of every tree. As the last flowers bloom, our mission that was given to us comes to an end.
Now I can drag here.
Let us hear one last time the sweet melody of the waterfalls, the whisper of leaves, and the ancient words of the rocks. The rest of the tribe is already on the reef, soon ready to fly away towards new adventures in unknown lands. At nighttime, the majestic birds guide us along the oceans. Like every year, as the sun breaks at dawn, they will leave us on the new island.
So, also really nice. It also works really well if you have this combination of just good graphics, good music, interesting interaction, of course, that makes the whole experience much more worthy. And then there's this one also from New Zealand called Ode to Goat, which is also this, the story itself is actually quite linear, but the experience is really nice. And then you can choose, do you want them to read it or do you want to read it yourself? So that might be interesting for children as well. what you notice if I click through the story is that this is really built up as layers. So you have all these different parallax layers. There's these transparent layers behind each other, and they move according to the speed or the depth, basically, and that gives you a sense of depth throughout the whole story. So you see the layers in front moving faster than the layers behind, which makes sense. That's how we experience the world ourselves as well. Here as well, so you see that the way that the background layers move slower than the foreground layers. So this is really, you can do inspect element on this, and you can actually see all the different layers loading, and they're transparent so that the goat can actually fit inside of that world. It's a bit more complex than that because you have particles and things moving and things not necessarily in these layers, but that's why they use a full 3D engine, so you have all that power that you can have. Yeah. So you can experience the game for yourself. I'll also put the slides online. This is really fun to go through. And last thing was one from Belgium, which is called The Bear and His Scarf, and was made for Club Brugge, the football team. And it's a story about club love and respect. So it was, there were a lot of things going on at the same time with this story. So one of the things that they made was a book that people can actually read to their kids. That are really like the target audience was really the fans of Club Brugge. And then they had the interactive story as well, which is basically the book reworked into an interactive online story. And so you can scroll and you can discover. The scrolling is actually just limited to scenes, but it works really well, I think. So you see here, it's also built up of, so every scene is also built up out of these layers. And so some of the layers come in and out of view. Let's show that again so you can see. So you see it starts out blurry and then it becomes lighter. So every scene has this tiny little timeline where it says, okay, from second 0 to second 2, something happens with the blur, and then something happens with this little ear that moves sometimes, and things like that. So they add these little animations or interactions throughout the game. All right. They also have it in Dutch, actually. So, and then they meet the rabbit in the woods, and it's also wearing a scarf, but it's from a different team. So, of course, they're not so happy with them. And it's basically about working together and going beyond the experience of your teams, of course. The colors of the scarf are different, so they're mortal enemies now. And the system they use was really inspiration to do what we're going to do today, even though we're going to do a very limited version of that. But they use the same system, which is called Vue.js, that we're also going to use. They've added a couple of extra things like the snow or the leaves falling, which we won't go into, but that's also something extra that we can do on top. But also the story itself here is really linear because it's just going from 1 to 12, following that whole story. All right. Right, and then we go all the way back because this is the last things that I showed are all quite linear in their storytelling capabilities. But this is state of the art based on what's available on the web. And what I also wanted to show is what's state of the art in terms of nonlinear storytelling. And that's this. And we're back to the very first slide that I showed you, back to Zork, back to text adventure games. But there's a huge difference here. And that difference is that you can do anything. So this game is called AI Dungeon. It's been out since a year or so. And Even though it's a text adventure game, if you want to download it on your computer, it's about 6 gigabytes that you have to download. Because, as I said before, it can do everything. There's no limit to what you can type. So these old Zork games, there is of course limits, and a lot of times you would encounter this limit where it says, I don't understand you, or I don't know what you mean, or you can't do that here, or there's no whatever here. This game is different because it uses AI, and it's basically trained on all the human language that you see on the web. You can type whatever you want, and the game is just going to adapt. So you might decide, so you see somebody coming up to you, one of the leaders of the community, and then you can start asking him questions. But you can do something else as well. You can say, do you play piano? And then maybe it turns out that he's a piano player and you can play piano together. Or you can ask if he wants to go take a sauna with you, or drive away and just ignore the whole guy and just drive away in your spaceship. And everything works. The game just adapts to whatever you type. It's a completely crazy experience to be able to experience that. And I'm not sure if I still have it running. I had a computer upstairs that had this whole thing downloaded, because you actually need a very powerful computer to run this text game, which is funny. But it's actually amazing to play, because the possibilities are really endless, what you can do in this game, which is very, very strange to experience for the first time. So even though it's a text adventure game, it just goes with you and it just follows you. And this is basically like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, or like tabletop games where you have a dungeon master, so somebody in your group who decides what the game is about. This is basically like that, your dungeon master, so the guy who talks to you through the story. So that's basically what's going on, but then through AI. If you get a chance to play it, it's amazing. You should definitely do it. It's an eye-opening experience. So you see, we have all of these options. Basically, the scope is very wide of all the things that we can tackle. We won't be able to tackle them all today. What I want to focus on today is this idea of hypermedia and hypertext, because I feel that that's something that comes back in all of these games. There are some aspects that are also a bit difficult to do, like, for example, this Zork game, these text adventure games, even though they look simple, being able to implement them and being able to understand natural language is actually a very difficult problem. So we're also not going to try to tackle that today, because a lot of that comes into the programming, and we're not going to focus on that today. But I want to talk a little bit about memory in games as well. So that's one thing that we will feature, but also we'll try to limit that, because I want to make sure that you can all handle that. And if you want to implement a game like this, or an interactive experience, we of course need a game. And I was struggling a bit, as you know, I've been doing some workshops. So I was struggling a bit with the time to find out, okay, can I make an whole game for this? And the answer is no. So I took an existing game, and one of the craziest games that I could find, which was not Zork, but this game called Return to Zork, which is this game, which is basically a very early graphics game, and it looks super weird, and that's why I think it's so nice to explore. It also has very memorable scenes in it, or at least for me, because I was struggling with it so much. So that's the game that we're going to build. I have a small video of what the game looks like. So you can see it has a very unique style, I would say. It doesn't age very well, but I think it's nice to be able to explore. But of course, remember that the graphics is really, like, you can put in whatever you want. That's not really the point. So here's a part of it. So you can walk around, you can click on things.
Go away! I haven't got anything for you! I've only got one milk cow, and she only eats carrots! So just go away! Ah, it's all right. Just take what you need and go away. And you can take that ludicrous box out there too. I didn't order it, and I didn't want it. The missus didn't order it, and she doesn't want it. And the cow don't need it either. So just go.
It's a bra box, which is what it's talking about. So there's a bra in front of the house for some reason. is a cow. Picture of the cow. Take some hay from the cow. And the cow booms. So I thought it was funny because it showed like a lot of the interactions and the way that the game is put together using this system. So how exactly are we going to build that? Are there people already have a little bit of an idea of how you would do that with the knowledge that you have right now? Niet echt. Ezra, you feel like you have the power already in you.
You put it in terms of just having a kind of image-based interface and buttons, and then having buttons trigger a little animation.
Yeah, yeah. It is. And there's actually two ways that we're going to implement it today, the same game. And one way is that we're going to do this through this idea of hypermedia. And so if you can imagine, this game is basically a map, right? So the first thing that you make whenever you make a game like this is figure out the map. This is done with Miro, which we already used. And so here you have, okay, there's an intro, then you go to this place, the Valley of the Vultures. Then you go to the lighthouse outside, then outside, you can click on the door, then you go to the door, then you have to give a password, and then you can go inside. And then you can also from here travel to Shandbar, which is this town. And then there's a school and shop there, and in the school you can meet a teacher. And so that's basically how you're going to structure your layout of the game, basically your game map, your internal game map. And so a simple approach that we can do, and that's why I like it so much, is actually to use hypermedia for us. So we already have this concept of hypermedia. We already have the web, so why don't we use it the way that we can use it, which is just to take all of these different concepts and make them into pages, right? So the Valley of the Vultures is actually a page called vultures.html. If you go to the lighthouse, you click a link, and that link takes you to this one, which is lighthouse.html. If you open the door, you go to lighthouse door, and you go to inside, and so forth. This works, and we'll do that in a minute. One negative aspect of it is because you travel from page to page, it's actually quite difficult to remember state within the pages. So the way that you need to keep state, and we'll tackle it in a different way, is you can do it through cookies, where you can store a cookie, and that's actually what cookies do. And then that cookie can say, oh, well, you met the vulture, you scared them away, or you picked up something in the shop, or things like that. But we'll see that there's a better way. That's what we'll explore today. So this is like approach number one, which is really the simplest one, where every page just connects to each other. And a lot of the pages are really simple. There's one aspect more that we need, and that is the moment that so this is Shandbar. This is the town that we'll implement. As you can see, it's amazing. And then one of the things that we need to do is we need to be able to click on these different houses, right? So we need to be able to, we're on the bridge, and now we need to be able to click here to go to these different places. So how do we do that? Well, if we do it on the web, this is one image, but we can work with this technique that's already on the web for a long time, which are called image maps. And with image maps, what we can do is basically define these hotspots. So we can say, well, this is something that you can click on. We can define a rectangle. We can click on here, or here, or here, or down. And so this down is also important because this is how you go back. So if you could go back to the bridge, you go back to where you came from. And then maybe if our town is bigger, we can also click in the distance, and then you could see that part as well. So we're basically having these invisible buttons on top of the pages as well. And the way that we make this, because we really have to go in the image, and we have to define the rectangles of where everything needs to be. The way that we do this is using a tool, because we don't want to do this by hand. There's a visual tool that we can use at imagemap.org, where we can just drag these shapes through. So we can drag a shape, and it generates the HTML code for us, which is going to be. So we just have to say, well, if you click this, you go to Shandbar School inside, because you click the door, for example. So now you go inside. And if you click here, or if you click here, you go back, because that's your further around, so we go back. And then you can click on the bell as well. And that does something. And so you get that HTML code, and that's basically almost all the code you need for a page. And then there's some wrapper code, some generic code that we wrap around every page that will be required as well. So that's way one. And even in approach number 2, we'll use that same approach as well. As I said before, so this is what the code looks like. So we have, maybe I should talk about this as well. We have an image. We know what an image tag is, an HTML. So it refers to a folder called media, and then it refers to lighthouse door. And then it says, well, this image needs to be linked, so it needs to have hyperlinks, and the hyperlinks come from an image map. So we use this tag called useMap with hashtag image map because this is the name of the image map. So if we call it image map here, we can call it image map here. And in a map, you have these different areas. And areas, this way you can skip. It's not really important. This we can skip, but this is important. Where does it link to? So where does this area link to? Well, if you go to the lighthouse door, so if we're at the door, we can actually knock on the door, and we have to know the password. So we go to this different page, which is lighthouse password. And then this part, that's of course the part we don't want to program because these coordinates are really hard to do if we have to do them by hand. So that's actually generated by that tool. Well, the whole thing is generated by the tool, but this is just, okay, where's the X and Y position of the rectangle? And then what shape it is. So you can use rectangles, polygons, ellipses. And then you have a bunch of these, and then that gets deleted. So these are the hyperlinks of your image. Is that clear? So that's the basic principle that we're going to employ. And there are a couple of extra things that we're going to add on top. One of them is these messages. So at some point in the game, we need to show a message to the user, like you probably need to do that as well. Like, okay, you did this action and now something happens or nothing happens. So we need to be able to tell them that. We can do that through sound, but we can also show a message on screen. And Toastify is a way that it shows on screen. And so they're called toasts because they sort of pop up, right? That's the joke. So they pop up and then they disappear again, which is not how Toast works at all, but whatever. So that's a library that we'll need to include in our page as well. And then finally, yeah, it's my last slide. We're also going to look at the next step. So basically a different way of implementing this, where instead of making all these different pages, we're just going to make one page, one HTML page. And that page is going to include all of our different scenes. And that allows us to reuse a bit of the code, because a lot of these pages you'll see have copied code, because we have to do the same thing over and over again. We have to make sure that we have this framework and then we can click and things like that. And by using a framework like Vue, we can skip this copied code and we can just focus on the unique thing per scene. So that makes it a bit easier for us. But this approach in general, I think, is useful because it doesn't apply just to interactive storytelling, but like every kind of interaction that we want to do on the web, which is why I hinted at it. It's already referring to the things that I want to do in the next workshop in December around interactive websites, where we'll also use this framework. All right. That's it for me. Any questions at the moment?
Yes, I missed the part where you were talking about the program between the first approach, where you have different pages, and it can be solved by using cookies. That I don't understand.
Yeah. So we know cookies basically as a way of tracking people, but originally what cookies do is actually they remember a piece of data from page to page. So if a reason why we use them, for example, if you log into Internet or Canvas or whatever, you log in, the computer checks that you have the right account number and the right password, and then it sends you a cookie. And the next time you visit a page, you pass along that cookie to the server as well. And by passing that along, the computer actually knows, okay, it's still Kato logging into this server. So what we can do is use a cookie to basically remember all the things that we have. Okay, we've taken something from the shop, we store that in the cookie. So the cookie is basically like a small sticky note where we can put things on it. And this contains the state of our game. So basically, its brain. So did we beat the troll or not? Did we already solve the quest in the mythical mountain? Did we already talk to that guy? That sort of thing. And those are things that we need to pass around from page to page. So that's why we can use cookies. Now, in the approach where we use Vue.js, we won't use cookies because Vue.js is actually, that's the whole point, actually has a very good system for remembering that state, that memory of the game. And you'll see that makes it easy to centralize that memory. And that's really, really important because we have just one place in the whole app or game or page that contains all of the state of the game. Did we take that from the shelf? Did we meet the vulture or not? So all of these things will be centralized. Where are we in the game? All of these core aspects are really important, of course, when we're working with a game. What's our score? Something like that. That would also be kept in this central data storage, which is just one place in the whole game, instead of spread around all of these different pages. So that's why I don't want to show the cookie approach, because I think so once you start doing that, you get into trouble, and I think then you need a better approach. So I want to show you that better approach as well. But if I start with that, it's going to be confusing. So I want to do approach 1 first, and then take the next step. All right, this seems like a good time to take a break, unless you can still keep going. Break. Okay, so we take 10 minutes and then we come back, and then I'll tell you what you can download so you can actually get started. Zoom, share screen. Share. Ik ga ook mee met jullie volgen, dan kun je een heel proces zien. Ja, dus Marek, jij ook, je mocht die link intypen en dan krijg je een zip-file die je gaat downloaden. En dan gaan we er aan beginnen. Hè. Dus zoals ik zei, er zitten 2 aanpakken in. Maar ik ga eigenlijk de HTML-pagina's gaan we niet gebruiken, die gaan we een beetje links laten liggen. Dus ik ga die er zo meteen ook uitsmijten. Gewoon om te laten zien hoe dat werkt. Of ik ga die niet eruit smijten, maar ik ga ze opzij zetten. Dus dat is die zip-file. Daar komt normaal een bestandje uit dat RTZ heet, een foldertje. En daarin zit eigenlijk heel het project in. En dat ga ik op mijn desktop zetten. Voilà, ik ga er een underscore voor zetten, dan weet ik dat dat van boven staat bij mij. Maar dat hoeft je niet te doen. En dan kun je dat open doen in Visual Studio Code, of je kunt ook gewoon op index.html klikken en dan krijg je eigenlijk het spel te zien zoals het werkt. En dan hier kun je al eens zien waar dat doet. Dus je kunt zelf dat spel al eens spelen. Misschien is dat wel tof om dat eens te proberen. Ja, sure. Zet je geluid ook aan. Dus dat is echt het begin van het echte spel Return to Zork, maar dan een beetje versimpeld voor de tutorial. Maar zit jij daar al? Ja. Op de deur klikken. En dan nog eens klikken. Ja. Dus Michel, Anna, lukt dat voor jullie ook om dat spel te spelen en op te doen? Je kunt ook op de vulture klikken, hè? Doe je dat gewoon? Dan vliegt hij weg. En, wacht, hè, dat wil ik dus laten zien. Dat is misschien merk je dat niet op, maar dat is een van die belangrijke zaken. Dus ik kan hier in het begin, als ik dat bord wil lezen, moet ik eigenlijk eerst die vulture wegjagen in het spel zelf. Maar dat heb ik nu niet geprogrammeerd. Moet eigenlijk die steen pakken. En dan, als die steen in een adventure zit, dan kun je naar die vulture die steen gooien en dan is die weg. Hier kun je er gewoon op klikken. Maar hier zit dus al een image map, dus je kunt gewoon op de weg klikken. Dan gaan we naar hier. Of je kunt ook op de vulture klikken, dan valt je aan. En dan, als je nog eens klikt, dan is die weg. En nu kun je op dat bord klikken. En dan krijg je dat filmpje.
This used to be called the Valley of the Sparrows. It's had a name change recently.
Ja. Dus die komt geregeld terug. Dan moeten die plant oppikken en zo. Dat kunnen we nu niet doen. Maar wat interessant is, als ik nu terug ga naar deze scene, zie je dat ik die scene heb, maar zonder de vulture. Dus is weg. En dit is de state. Dus ik hou in het spel eigenlijk al bij of dat je vulture, of dat je nu weggejaagd is of niet. Maar ook bijvoorbeeld als ik nu dat pad afga naar de lichttoren en ik druk hier beneden, waar het terug is. Dus als ik terug ga, dan zie ik dat die vulture nog altijd weg is. Terwijl als ik dat doe en ik ga gewoon ineens dat pad af en ik kom nu terug, dan zit die vulture weg. Dus dat zijn zo zaken waar je over moet nadenken. Je kunt dat doen doordat je verschillende pagina's doet, maar dat wordt al snel complex, omdat... En je gaat dat zien in de eerste versie die we gaan maken. Je kunt wel een pagina maken met vulture en vulturegone.html. Maar dan op het moment dat ik naar die lichttoren ga en ik wil nu terug, ja, naar welke van die twee pagina's link ik? Dat weet ik niet, maar dan heb ik geen state. Dus dan zou ik ook lighthouse with vulture gone moeten maken en lighthouse.html. Maar je ziet dat het begint al heel snel heel ingewikkeld te worden. Dus we moeten ergens die state op een slimme manier gaan bijhouden. Dat gaan we straks doen. Maar nu gaan we ons er nog niet al te veel van aantrekken, maar ik laat al een beetje zien waar het issue gaat zijn in de toekomst. En dan een ander ding dat ik wil laten zien. Dus je kunt hier naar die lichttoren gaan. Dan kun je naar de stad gaan, Shanbar. Hier kun je dan nog niet alles werkt, maar je kunt wel naar de school gaan. En hier zie je ook zo'n toast message. Dus als je hierop drukt, zegt een knocking on the door does nothing. Dus dat is die toast message die erop komt. Je moet hier specifiek op de bel drukken.
Well, you're late. It's all right, but don't let it happen again or be marked down on your permanent record. Tardiness.
Yes. En nu kun je dus ook terug. En nog eens terug. En dan hier kun je ook naar de shop. Die kunnen open doen. Hier is ook een keicoole animatie in. Wow, crazy. Ja. En dan, dat wil ik ook laten zien, dus hier kun je ook kiezen, je kunt dat uit die kassa halen, maar dus al die mogelijkheden werken ook. Dus als jij eerst op de tickets klikt, of eerst op de muntjes, dan gaan die eerst weg. En hij onthoudt dat ook, dus hij weet ook dat die dingen nu in een inventory zitten. Dus als ik hierop klik, gaan die muntjes weg. En nu als ik terug eruit ga en ik ga terug naar die kassa, ja, met amazing animation, dan zie ik dat die muntjes ook weg zijn, want ik heb die net gepakt. En dan als ik die tickets pak, dan is dat ook weer in deze kassa leeg. In die animatie, ja, dus dan moeten we verschillende animaties gaan maken. Of gewoon zorgen dat dat net in die animatie komt. Dat zijn allemaal zaken waar je inderdaad over moet nadenken. Goed. Iedereen snapt het een beetje wat we gaan doen, het spel. Dus... Wat ik wou voorstellen is dat we dat from scratch gaan bouwen, gewoon om eens te laten zien hoe dat werkt in de twee mogelijkheden. Want we zouden ook al door de code kunnen gaan, maar we hebben nog wel wat tijd, dus kunnen we eens zien hoe dat werkt. Dus wat ik ga doen, hier, misschien eerst een beetje housekeeping. Ik ga van deze folder, die Return to Zorg, een kopie maken van die folder, zodat ik die originele nog heb. En ik ga dan deze Return to Zorg work noemen, dus dat is degene waaraan ik ga werken. En al die HTML-bestanden die gaan er eigenlijk uit. Dus ik laat enkel de CSS staan. De media folder, dat is het belangrijkste, want daar staan al die beelden in. En alle HTML, die gaan eruit en die gaan we gewoon from scratch bouwen. En deze folder mogen we dan open doen in Visual Studio Code. Maar omdat je die andere ook nog hebt, als je dan ergens vastgeraakt, kun je daar altijd gaan spieken waar we proberen te doen. Dat ga ik ook doen. Dus ik ga dan deze open doen. En een beetje groter maken. En misschien mijn team op licht zetten. Dus normaal gezien heb ik in die folder een aantal files staan. Nu, in CSS staat er main.css, in media staan al die beelden en filmpjes. En dan is er ook een file prettier.rc die we gaan negeren. Maar dat zorgt er gewoon voor dat ons code automatisch geformateerd wordt. Dus als je Visual Studio Code, jullie hebben dat allemaal denk ik, hè, maar een van de instellingen die ik gebruik, dat zit hier bij dat tandwieltje. Ik kan naar settings gaan. En ik heb hier een instelling bij teksteditor, formatting, format on save, dat automatisch aanstaat, waardoor elke keer als ik bewaar, dat hem automatisch mijn code gaat formateren. Dus dat maakt het wat handiger voor mij. Alright, dus we gaan beginnen met onze niet-view versie, dus waar alles in verschillende pagina's zit. En we gaan daar dat niet index.html noemen, we gaan dat suite voor een andere gebruiken. We gaan dat title.html noemen. Dus dat is ons eerste bestandje eigenlijk. En wat we doen altijd als we een nieuwe pagina maken, is gewoon met exclamation mark en met abbreviation, up, en dan krijgen we het begin van die pagina. Die viewport laten we staan en dan voor title typen we return to Zorg, dat is een naam van het spel. En dan hier moeten we eens na gaan denken over wat we hier juist willen gaan doen. Dus als we kijken naar dat spel, wat we eigenlijk hebben, is we hebben een kadertje met een beeld in het midden. En dan hebben we alles daar rond dat eigenlijk schaalt. Dus dat beeld blijft altijd op diezelfde grootte staan, 46:480, dat is de resolutie van dat spel. Maar dat blijft altijd in het midden staan. Dus wat we gaan doen, of wat interessant zou zijn, is dat we hier in het midden één elementje hebben. Ja, dit is de view-versie al. Dus we hebben onze body en daarin hebben we één elementje main. En daarin gaan we dan ons beeld hebben staan. Dus we gaan hier gewoon een main tag maken. En in die main tag komt dan een image te staan. En omdat dit de title is, dus dit is het eerste beeld als dit, willen we hier bij die image tag linken naar dat mediabeeld. Dus in media kun je gewoon gaan zien welk beeld dat je nodig hebt. Ik ken die natuurlijk. Maar het is in deze die we zoeken, media en dan title.jpg. Dus we gaan hier typen media/title.jpg. En we hebben al wat CSS, maar ik ga die ook gewoon allemaal wegsmijten, ook om dat from scratch te doen. Dus ik ga dat even aan de kant zetten, voor mocht ik daar toch nog iets missen of een foutje maken. Maar het eerste wat we doen, als we dit willen testen, is we gaan live server open doen. Dus in de titlepagina, wat we gaan doen, is bij view command palette. En dan live server typen, open with live server. En dan krijgen we een preview van die file en dat gaat er zo uitzien. En hou mij tegen als jullie iets helemaal anders te zien krijgen. Dat wil zeggen dat uw beeldje niet juist gelinkt is. Dus check eens dat er hier bij image source effectief de juiste staat. Normaal gezien, als je command en klikt op dat beeld, dan zou je ook naar dat beeld moeten gaan. Je kunt ook... Zeg maar. Ja, wat ik gedaan heb, is dus die RTZ work. Ik heb gewoon alle HTML-bestanden eruit gesmeten en ik heb een nieuwe title.html. Want die vorige zit nog een aantal extra informatie die we nu gaan doen. Het begin van uw pagina is skelet. Ja. Dus, ik ga nog eens doen. Dus het skelet van uw pagina is gewoon exclamation mark. Enter. En nu krijg ik dat begin van die pagina. Ja, dat is wel een belangrijke, dat wil ik niet elke keer typen. En omdat ik image gebruik, hoef ik ook niet elke keer het begin van die tag te typen. Dus ik hoef niet die groter en kleiner dan tekens te typen. Ja, juist, ik was in het Engels bezig. So I can just type main and or just M as long as it completes. I can type M tab and then have that complete, or just probably main tab and then that makes the tag. And I'm already at the point where I want to be. So here I can press enter, type image tab, and then have that image autocomplete for me. And then I have another extension. So I have a couple of extensions here. I have Prettier that formats my code. So here in the extensions. And I also have Path IntelliSense. And that allows me to autocomplete paths. So if I now start typing the M for the media folder, it should already autocomplete for me. So now I can just click instead of typing. I can just click on media title.jpg and that's going to complete that file for me. And then if I open live server, so view command palette live server, that actually shows this page. Now, as you can see, it's not correct yet because it's not in the middle. And we'll fix that. So now we do a little bit of CSS, not too much, because we don't actually, like all the styling actually comes from the images, not from the CSS. All right, so Isra, are you following? Okay. So in the CSS folder, you'll find a document called main.css, which looks like this. What I did is just delete all the text from it because I want to start with a blank slate. And I'm going to do a quick sanity check to make sure that everything works by taking the body and setting the background to black. Because that shows me that then if the background will be black, then I know that it's working. In this case, it's not working because I haven't linked the style sheet to the HTML document yet. So that's the next step, is to go to the title. And then here, after the title attributes, so right before this closing head tag here, I type link, press tab. And then here I'm going to type the place, the location of the CSS file, which is in the CSS folder. So I type C for CSS, and then just click on that and main.css. Fien, werkt het nu bij je? Yeah. Yeah, indeed. So if you make a new file and you click on a file already, it's going to make that file in that folder that you clicked on. So you have to make sure, if you want to make a file in the root folder, that you actually click on nothing, or you click on a file that already exists, so you can put it in the same location. It's kind of sneaky. And so now if we have these two linked up, we should see that we have a black background, like this. A black ground. Indeed. Is this working? No. So what I did is add this line here. And then in CSS, and I'll put the two side by side so you can see in CSS I have this written, which is my background. Lieve, anders zie je zitten van zo'n klein beetje tech support te doen. Cool, excellent, works. All right, so the next line of CSS, because we'll do like almost all the CSS right now. Initially, what we want to do is we want to remove all margin padding, all the weirdness. And one thing that I do for these projects, and I've learned this actually from Imen, who I did a web teaching with, is to basically link to everything, which is in CSS with this star. So this basically means select every element on the whole page. And then with the brackets here, we're going to say put the margin of every element to 0 and the padding of every element to 0. This removes all margin and padding, which means that all elements will be treated similar. We don't actually see much difference in our page, except for the fact that now, instead of having a little bit of margin between the image as we had before, so I'll remove it so you can see. Before we had this tiny little image here in the corner. We don't have that anymore if we set margin and padding to every element, because every element also means the body. So there's no more margin and padding at that element. And then there's one extra line that we need to type for all elements, and that's box sizing. So here we're going to write box dash sizing and press enter. So as the moment that it auto completes, it's actually good to type enter or tab so you don't make any typing mistakes. And then you choose border box like this. All right, so what that's doing is basically doing the calculation of your page a bit differently. We don't have to worry too much about that. It's not going to be an issue here, but it's always useful to have that in the beginning. All right, and then we're going to make a couple of lines of styling here, and we can actually do them in the body here. So I'm going to just put a basic font where I just type font 14 pixels sans serif. Yeah, so here it's not going to be very clear what it's needing to do. So I will ask you to ignore it. Once we go into CSS layout, then it becomes more clear. But for here, I don't think actually we need it. But so we're going to set the font to just a regular non-intrusive font. And because the background is black, we want our color of our text to be white. Now we don't use so much text, so that's not going to be a big of issue, but it's always good to have something there. What is important is that we want to set the height of the page to 100 view height, because we want basically to take up the whole screen. And then also, if there's more content, we want the overflow to be hidden. So we don't want any scroll bars. So this basically means if your content is bigger than what I can fit on the page, you'll want to see scroll bars or not. So overflow hidden basically means no scroll bars, because we don't want to scroll our page. We just want everything to be nicely in the middle. I did this before on the HTML element, so it could be that this is in the wrong spot, but we'll figure that out soon. And then, of course, we want to center it, right? So we want this element to be in the center. And what we're going to do here to do that is we're going to use a flexbox to place that in the middle. And again, this is not a CSS layout course, but basically what we need to do is set display here to flex. And then we need to, there's multiple things that we can do, but we're just going to use the simple one, which is justify content center, align items center. What that does is basically centers the content both in horizontal direction and the vertical direction. So this basically says whatever's inside of the body, take that and put that in the middle. And we should see that happening because our main element is now just, so our image is now in the middle of our page. And please check that it actually is. So these 3 lines actually make sure that your page is in, your box is in the middle, or your title image. Yeah. Is this working? Yeah, cool. Then what we need to do for our main element is we're also going to specify a size. So we know that our main element, which is this, what the image contains, has a fixed width of 640 pixels and a height of 480 pixels. And we're also going to use position relative. And that's because, and I'm not sure if I use it here, but you can have multiple elements on top of each other. So think about the parallax effect that I showed before, where you have elements scrolling on top of each other. By setting position relative, we can actually say, well, this is your new home position. So if we now use position absolute, we can actually have elements that are connected to other elements on that main element. So they all use, in this case, this top corner to all position themselves. So if we have, for example, a video and an image on top of each other, or like partially on top of each other, or with transparent images, by using position absolute for these elements, they all come nicely on top of each other. So we can use layers to move these things around. So this is always useful to have for your main element. And then this last one we'll do together. There's one extra thing that I want to add, which proved very useful when I was making this, and that is to use background green for the main element. And the reason why I do that is because later on, you'll see that if I make mistakes or I link to the wrong thing, some of the images start out black, or videos or something, they start out black. And by using a background green, I know that an element is missing. So I know if I click on something and I don't see anything, then I know, okay, here's an element missing. So normally within the game, we never see that background. So if we see that background, it means that we made a mistake, and that's really useful for us. So for debugging, it's always good to use like very ugly colors, so it's really clear that something's going wrong. For example, here, if we make a mistake in the typing, we immediately see, okay, right, so this is now the wrong link, and we can immediately see, okay, this is disappearing instead of just what would happen here. Well, if we didn't have a background like this, sorry, going a bit too fast. It's just black on black, so we have no clue what's going on. It might be like tens of different reasons. By using a color here, it's kind of obvious that something's missing. So this is a trick that already helped me when I was developing this, so it's really useful. Now, Again, Hypermedia, think about this. So this is our starting element. And if we go to our Miro dashboard, where's my interactive storytelling thing? You play the game now, it's really short, but we go from the intro to the Valley of the Vultures. That's our first page, actually. So we're going to call that page vultures.html. And the media that we're looking for it, and you can go through the images if you want, is this one called vultures-vulture.jpg. So that's the first one. It's the I try to be consistent with the naming, which already helps. So all of the scenes with the vultures actually start with vultures dash. And then I have one, okay, where it's the attack, one where it's the vulture is gone, one where it's just a sign, and one with the sign with a movie. So those are all part of the vulture, but this is the first one that I want to link up. All right, so I know that I have to make a second page in a minute here, but first I want to make a link to that page. And so the way that I do that is I just take the entire image and I make a link around that. So you could just type an A tag here if you want, but there's a better way, which is to take this image, select the image tag, because here we want to wrap our tag around it. And then here go to View, Command Palette, and then choose or type wrap with abbreviation. So I just type the word wrap, and it's going to show up Emmet wrap with abbreviation. And abbreviation just means tag for us. So it's just wrapping something with a tag. So I press enter, type the name of the tag, which is A, which is the link, press tab again, and now it made a link at the beginning and at the end of this thing. There's nothing magic about it. It's just adding some code. You can also type this code by hand if you want, but it's just faster. Especially if you've done it a couple of times, because you can just do, if you're faster, you can just do it like this. Because the View command palette actually has a shortcut, Command-Shift-P, that I just use all over the time. And here you see that the commands that you recently used are actually sorted. So the first command, the wrap with abbreviation, is there immediately. So I just have to press enter. So it's really fast. Okay, and that links to a new page, which is vultures.html, which we don't have yet. Right, but this is enough. This is our title page, basically. I'm also going to cheat a little bit by making a new window and opening the old Return to Zork one, so the one that I made before, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. It seems that I'm not, so that's fine. All right, so we can play our game. It's a very limited game. We can click our title, and then it goes to the next page. And then it says cannot get vultures.html because we don't have that yet. Right? This works so far? Yeah. It's not amazing yet, but give it some time. So now we want to make this vultures.html. And basically what we're going to do is use the same approach that we did for our title, but then also use that for our vulture. So we're going to take our title page and just use Command-C. So we click on the title in the sidebar, so which is called the Explorer. We click here and then either right-click and use copy and paste, or just press Command-C, Command-V. And that's going to make a copy of that file called title copy. And then we rename that. Right, so we rename that to vultures.html. Was that clear? Is it on? Okay. I just press enter on the file name. Yeah. I think F2 works as well. No, only Windows. All right, so now if we play the game and we click through on title, we of course see that we now go to vultures.html. The vultures.html contains exactly the same image, and clicking that sort of goes in an infinite loop. So there's no way to get out of this. So the first thing that we need to do is actually change the media. So again, if you're unsure which media element you want, you can open that up and go look in the media, because if you click one, you can actually see the image. This is the one we're looking for, vultures-vulture.jpg. And what I'm going to do for this one, because this one is going to use, so the first one is just, it doesn't matter where you click, but the second one is actually using an image map. So I'm going to remove this A tag because I want to use a different system. I don't want an A tag for the whole image. I want to basically create these hot zones of things where I can click on. And here I'm going to type media/v and then choose vultures.jpg. And then I should see this image, which is my initial scene. In the game, if you play the game, actually, this is not the first scene, but well, it's sort of the first interactive scene, I would say. There's some intro film that I don't include. All right, and now for the image map. So if we, and so for that, we need a different site. So we're going to go to imagemap.org. And this we're going to use a lot because it's a way for us to make the image map. So we're going to select, choose select image. And then from our media folder, so again, in my case, it's desktop RTZ media, and then choosing the vultures-vulture.jpg. I'm going to select that image, and now I see that image in my image map. What I can now do is I can drag, so I can have these tools here. I can drag a rectangle atop the vulture. It's kind of very hard to see, unfortunately, but that creates that link for me. And then here in href, I'm not concerned with the title, but in href, I can type what happens if I click on that specific link. So what needs to happen the moment that I click this vulture, it actually needs to attack me. So I'm going to go to a different page, which is called vultures.attack.html. But I don't have to go to the vulture. What I can also do is I can just go down the path, right? I can ignore the vulture. Then I just can't read the sign. So what I can also do is make another rectangle, and then that goes down the path. So I just drag a place where it seems normal that I would click. It always makes sense that you make this area a bit bigger than you would normally do. So not just the path, but give people some extra room, so they can actually click down the path somewhere. Just make it obvious, like, okay, this is, if you're clicking here, you probably mean the vulture. If you're clicking here, you mean the path. And so you see that you get a second link here. And for that second link, we are going to go to the lighthouse. So we type lighthouse.html. I had a lot of problems with the spelling, so look at it, light with an H here and an H here, lighthouse.html. All right, so that's our image map. And now we can scroll down. And now we see that we get our code from here. So we can copy and paste this code. And then here where we had this image, we can actually replace that because we don't need it here. We can actually replace that with our code. There's one thing that's wrong because the system can't know, and that's because that's the image source here. It seems that it's in the same folder. So if I try it now, and I look at my page, I get this green icon with the broken link. And that's because my image is actually in the media folder. So here for the image source, I have to type media/vultures-vulture.jpg. And now what you should see is the moment, I'll close this because we don't need it anymore. The moment that I hover over my vulture here, I can see that it goes to a different page. So I can see that at the bottom, vultures attack. And if I go here, I see that I can go to the lighthouse, right? And this is basically the whole approach. This is basically the way that we're going to, or that we can build this entire game. And you can make this as complex or as simple as you want. So we're going to do that attack phase because once we are here, we also want to be able to read the sign actually. So we want to be able to click here. You see that we get an error here. One annoying thing that I think is the moment that you click is that you can actually see these highlights, right? And you can actually do it with tab as well. You can sort of see where everything is that you can click. I want to make that disappear as well. So back in my CSS code, I'm going to do something else. So this is called the outline. And this outline appears on the area. So for all intents and purposes, this area is now a link. This is like an A tag. So this is where we link to. And so what I want to do in CSS, in main.css specifically, is I want to say, well, if I have a map and inside of I have an area, then I want to have the outline set to none. So I don't want to see this outline around that area. And that's going to remove my area from view. I'm also going to try if this works. That will be fun. No, that doesn't work. So now if I click or if I press tab, I don't actually see where I can click. So that's kind of nice because I don't want people to give away all these tiny details, right? Already you see the problem of this game of, I'll leave this open, this problem of pixel hunting, which is that if you can't find the stone, which you don't see initially, remember this, I'm not sure if you can actually see it, but this stone, this is the one you have to pick up, right? How would you know? So it's very obvious for the people making this game. It's less obvious for the people playing this game. So initially I thought I could never beat this vulture because it would just attack me and I would not be able to get rid of it. So I just went down the path, but it turns out that at the sign you actually need the plant that's below the sign. So it took me a long time to figure out, oh wait, I have to go back and actually defeat that vulture because this is just the beginning, so you already forget about it. Anyway, all right, let's have the vulture attack us. And I'm actually going to let you do that as well. So what you need to do here is you make a page called vultures-attack.html, which contains an image, and the whole image just basically links to the next image, right? And the next page in our scene is then vultures-gone.html. And that's again a page with an image map, but we're not concerned with that one yet. We're just going to work from a page like the title page. And here it actually makes sense to link from the title page because we want to use the same approach because the whole page or the whole image becomes the link, right? So we have to make that distinction between pages where the whole thing is a link, like this one, where we just click away, or a page like this, where we can actually click on multiple parts, right? In one case, the whole thing is a link, like with the image, and the other, we use an image map. So work from this page. I'm going to leave you, let you try that for a minute, and then make a page that links from this vulture page to the attack page. So you can see the vulture attacking you. All right? Dan komt hij groot. Ja, dan komt hij niet groot. Ja? Ik ga even laten doen. Ja, maar wacht. Daar zit geen image meer onder. Het is gewoon een hele image. Nee, dus hier kun je gewoon op die image klikken en dan naar de pagina vulture komen. Dus hier zou je eigenlijk hetzelfde principe moeten doen als we de title page doen. Dus je pakt gewoon heel uw beeld en je klikt heel uw beeld. Dus heel uw beeld wordt gewoon door een naampak. Dus dat is een description terug, dat zijn de title of dat. Ja. Wel, dit is eigenlijk het principe. Dus met je vulture, je valt aan, klik hierop en dan gaan we naar het volgende.
Ja, maar dit is wel juist.
Ja, maar ja, beeld is juist, er wil geen image meer gebruiken. Want je image, maar je zou dat kunnen doen, maar je bent eigenlijk nog volledig.
Ja, maar dat heb ik niet gedaan. Dat was gewoon bij net als je hier ziet, dat man
Nee, dus hier is gewoon, je hebt gewoon één frame eigenlijk.
Ah, nee, goed. Je bent gewoon.
Ja, nee, het is juist. Alleen dat we nu hier met die moeten opmaken. Heel image. Dus die moeten. Wacht even. Ja, voor de abbreviation. Maar, ja, dat is ja. En dan moet je denken, oké, wat gebeurt er nu? Dus oké, die vulture valt aan. De volgende pagina is vulture, vultures, steekje, gone.
Dat is heel slecht.
Ah ja, dat kan ik niet maken. Ja. Ja. Ja, dus je kunt dat doen, hè, dat is yes. Ja, ik doe hier een puntje, ik doe altijd een streepje vultures, streepje, dat gaat niet aan van de vultures. Streepje kan. Ja. Ja. En is een deel van de picture vultures, streepje kan.
Ja.
Is dat zo? Ja. Yeah. So let's do that together. Really quickly. Even een chat lezen, bij mij werkt er iets niet. Oké. Michel?
Ja, ik zou eigenlijk dat stukje code opnieuw moeten zien, denk ik, van die... Ja, dus.
Ah ja.
Had ik nou iets niet juist gedaan, denk ik.
Ja. Merk op, ik heb dit niet getypt, hè. Dat komt van die imagemap.org.
Ja, ik heb die vorige afbeelding er niet uitgehaald, denk ik.
Ah, je hebt er 2 in staan. Als je er nog een afbeelding in hebt staan, wacht, want dat kan soms ook. Ja, dan ziet het er soms wel raar uit. In dit geval, soms komen die dan 2 onder elkaar. Maar je wilt 1 image en dan een map naar de image zelf. En dan dus als ik hierop klik, ga ik naar vulture attack. Ah ja, dit werkt, want dit is eigenlijk de foute resultaat. Dus die heb ik nog niet. Dus wat ik hier ga doen, is ik ga, omdat dat 1 beeld is, maar ga ik linken naar deze, want dit is eigenlijk dezelfde structuur die ik wil gebruiken. Dus ik copy en paste het title. En die ga ik noemen naar vultures-attack. Dat is dat beeld. En die gaan naar vultures-gone.html. En die moet ik dus ook maken. Dus dat is wel een variatie hierop, want eens dat die weg is, die dingen, dan kan ik hier ook weer 2 dingen doen. Ofwel kan ik naar het lighthouse gaan, ofwel kan ik naar de sign gaan.
Ja. Wacht. Hè.
Ik wacht. Kun jij zeggen wat er niet lukt, Michel?
Ja, wacht, hè. Ik krijg nu... dus ik ben op die startpagina, de titel.html. Ik klik op, dan kom ik bij de voucher HTML.
Ja.
Dan klik ik op de vogel, dan komt die aangevallen.
Ja.
En daar zit ik nu.
Ah ja, voilà.
Maar als ik op het padje klik, dan heb ik nog niks, dat moet ik nog doen.
Nee, dat is logisch, want die pagina hebben we gewoon nog niet gemaakt.
Ja, oké.
Dus zo bouwen we dat op. We beginnen gewoon, we beginnen er gewoon aan. Hè. We maken pagina per pagina, maken we heel de structuur van ons team. Dat is logisch dat we dit nog niet doen. Het zou heel raar zijn mocht dat nu al weten. Ja, dat hebben we nog niet gemaakt.
Nee, maar oké, dan ben ik terug bij, denk ik.
Ja. Perfect. Misschien moet je op mute zetten dan ook, dat is wel handig. Oké. En dan, so once we are done with the bird, it's gone. What we're going to do is also use an image map to indicate for the bird that's gone. So I'm going to copy and paste. It doesn't really matter that much, but I'm going to copy and paste from this vultures.html and rename that to vultures-gone.html. The most important thing is that here for the vultures, I want a gone version, so the one where I don't see the bird anymore. So the image is different, media vultures-gone.jpg. And actually what's interesting now is that the image map itself stays the same, right? This is not magic code. The coordinates for where we can click is the same. The lighthouse hasn't moved. So we can still click on this part where the lighthouse is because that link still works. Only now, clicking here would also bring us to the vulture attack, which is kind of weird because the bird is not there anymore. So this thing needs to go to something else. It needs to go to the sign, to the detail of the sign, which is vultures sign.jpg, this one. It needs to go somewhere else. So in our vultures-gone.html, we're going to change this one. So the one before where it attacked to vultures-sign.html. So it's basically zooming into the sign, going in there because we can now see that. And again, that page doesn't exist yet, so we have to make it. But note, and that's really important because we'll come back to that later, that map code is not strange. The only way that we use this generator is because we don't want to figure out these coordinates by hand. But you're free to change everything around and make the links and whatever. This is not, it's not untouchable code at all. Kato? The image map? Well, you can. If you want, you can keep an image map there. But if you want to think about it, the way that, so if I select it here, the way, so what would linked here is basically a rectangle that's like all, like the whole thing. Yeah. Which you can do, which is fine. If you always want to use image maps, then that's fine as well. But I want to show you multiple approaches to show that it's there. But if you say, well, I always want to use this same template where I have an image and an image map, and even if that image map is the whole image, then that's fine as well. But it doesn't make sense for something, I think at least, it doesn't make sense for something like the title where the whole thing is just the image. But in most of the cases, we'll use an image map because in most of the scenes where you're in, you want to do multiple things, or you can do multiple things. All right, so we click the sign. So let's make that page. And this page can also work the same way as the other one. So also with an image map. So I'm going to copy and paste the vultures gone page here and change it to vultures sign.html. And here the image is also vultures.sign, but of course, so if we click it, of course, our image map is now different. So we need to have a new image map generated here for us. So now the places where I can click are still the places of the lighthouse and the other things. So that doesn't make sense. So I go back to my image map generator, select the sign as an image. And now I want to highlight the parts where I want to link up the image. I actually got the old map here. So there's two things that I can do. That I can actually click on the sign itself and see the movie. And that's also why I wanted to show this. Or I can click away and I don't see the movie. So this is kind of a weird thing maybe in these adventure games, but clicking away, which means clicking on this gray part here or here, actually takes you outside of this scene. So I'm going to start by dragging over the sign itself, because that's going to show me the movie. And here for the reference, actually, I don't know yet, because this actually goes to a movie. It doesn't go to a new page, or at least I don't think so. That's not the way that I built it. Let's see. Yeah. But this actually goes to a video that I want to play. And then if I click away from that scene, so if I click on the other areas, I don't actually, I just go back to the vultures column page. So this one, the href, I don't know yet. So I'm just going to try it xxx, because that's the reference here is not, we don't know yet. And then I'm going to make another one, an area here, so next to it. And this area just goes to the old page, so vultures-gone.html. And then lastly is, so next to the other side of the sign, this place, I also go to vultures-gone.html. Right, so I can click in the middle and get the video. I don't know how to do that yet, but we'll look at it. I can click here and go away, or I can click here and also go away. Right, so I have 3 hot zones that I want to copy. And we see that translated in our generated HTML output as well. Note that this image link is already there. We just made that. So we don't have to copy that bit. We only have to copy the map part. Right? So again, don't treat this code as completely magic and untouchable, but use just the parts that you need. So I'm going to remove the old map code and replace it with this new map code. So here I have the media vulture sign, I have the image map, and then I have a link to the going away. And then I have this link that I don't know yet where I need to link up to. All right, so going to our game, what should happen is that we are now at the sign. If we click away at least, so now we can zoom into our sign and go away, right? This is pretty cool because we already have this interaction of where we can go to something, zoom in and then go back. We don't have the video yet, though. That's still kind of cool, I think, to be able to explore the world. And the bigger we make this, the more we can explore, the more interesting this becomes, and it really starts feeling like a game. But what do we do with this video? Well, we don't actually want it to link to anything. And so the way that we do that here for the href is just write a hashtag. The hashtag basically means nothing. And then we are going to, and now I'm riffing, so I hope this works, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a tag called onClick. And here I'm going to write play video, like this. And I've done it before, so when I was preparing it, I did a bit differently, so I hope this works, but we'll figure it out. Now, play video actually links to a function that doesn't exist yet. So if we now click here, nothing happens. Actually, I have to save first. Nothing happens. And also what's important is that if we open up our inspector tools, which you should always do, is that it says uncaught reference error. And so in the console tab, uncaught reference error, play video is not defined. Okay, that's perfect because that's what happens if we click this video, right? It's the video itself doesn't exist. Or not only does the video not exist, but the function that plays the video does not exist. Everybody still with me? You get the same error? Yeah. All right, so now we are going to go into scripting a little bit because now we want to make this function. And what this function is going to do is basically turn off the image and turn on a video. So we already are going to include our video element here, but we're going to hide it. So we're going to make another video tag. And for the source of our video, we're going to write media-vultures sign.mp4 because that's the name of the video. Yeah, the href you need to delete around it. Yeah, you just want the image. So this image map now functions as your links.
En münchen video's
Deze bedoel je?
nee,
Als je hier een tab pakt, dan kunnen die zo slepen naar waar je wilt. Bedoel je dat? So if we go back to our page, we now see the two elements appearing below each other. Note that we shouldn't be able to scroll because we said overflow hidden. So we don't want to see the two elements on top of each other. This is actually the point where we would use position absolute to put one on top of the other. But in this case, we don't really want to see the two at the same time. Instead, what we do is for the video, initially, we're going to say style equals display none. So this hides the video from view. And so what our script needs to do, and this is really the key point, that's what we need to think about. What our script needs to do is the moment that we click on the video, or we click on the sign, we call this function play video. What this function will do is it's going to hide the image. So before we were hiding the video, it's going to hide the image. It's going to show the video. So it's swapping one for the other. And then it's going to call that video with the function play, and that will play the video. And then once the video is played, maybe we do something else, but that's up to us. So we are going to go after the main tag and we're going to write script, because here we have our little script. And here we can write our function called play video, exactly the way that we wrote it before. And the way that we write functions here is with these brackets, and then we have these other brackets here indicating that we want to play our video. Right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to select both elements. So we're going to select our image element from the page, and we're going to select our video element from the page so we can refer to them. So the first off, the image. So we're going to write const image equals document dot query selector. And again, please let autocomplete do the work for you. If you see the command, just press enter or tab. Then open brackets, and then between quotes, you write img. So what this is going to do is it's going to select the image tag from the page. Now, we have only one, so that's easy. If you have multiple ones, it would select the first one for you. So maybe you have to be more specific in other cases where you have lots of images, but now it's just this one. Second one, we are going to select the video. So we're going to say document query selector, exactly the same thing, video. These names between the brackets need to be correct. That's the name of the tag that we refer to on the page. So that's this specific element that we now select and this specific element that we now select. But these names are names that we choose. So we can also name them the image or the video or whatever. I'm just calling it image and video. But it's important to remember that these names are free for us to decide. All right, with the image selected, the first thing that we're going to do is say image.style.display equals none. And what that's going to do is it's going to turn off the image, or going to remove the image from view. Remember that this is very similar, even though the syntax is a bit different. It's very similar from what we see here, where it also says style displays none. So we're basically treating the image the same way that we treat the video before. We are removing it from the page, or we're hiding it from the page.
What is the difference between the display none above and...
Right, good question. So what's happening here is that we do it programmatically. We do it with code. So this is a way that we can access the style property of that image. So every element has a style property. And then we can set the display, or the style attribute is the name, and then we can set the display property to none. But this is set initially. So this is the thing that we want to do initially when we load the page. So we have to specify, the syntax is a bit different, but it does exactly the same thing. Only this does it through code, and this does it by basically setting the CSS before. But what we can do in JavaScript, and that makes it really powerful, is we can select elements and then we can style them just as we did in CSS, only through code. So we can turn classes on and off. We can add style attributes. We can change the colors dynamically. We can even animate that. So there's lots of possibilities that we can do. So this hides our image. And so if we click here, we see that we don't get anything anymore. right now because our image is gone and our video is also gone. So we get that green background. So that's, again, this is why this green background is so useful. Does this work for everybody? And then we do the same thing, but for the video, we say video style display equals block. So block is the default. It's basically saying, okay, now the video can appear. Now, the video and the image actually start at exactly the same frame. So it seems like nothing has changed, but now it's up to us. So now we can say video.play, and that actually plays the video. Note that we have to include our brackets here as well. Oh, I can actually do this. Yeah. So video.play at the end will actually play the video. So if you click here, you actually see the animation.
This used to be called.
Yes, we know. Ah, it's so funny. I just hear it working. That's nice.
Bij mij werkt het niet.
Nee?
Nee, maar ik ben nog niet helemaal mee met een paar pagina's, denk ik.
Oei. Michel, wat je misschien kunt doen is deze code gewoon kopiëren voor vultures-sign.html. En ik ga dat gewoon op Discord zetten voor u. Dan kun je dat vandaar kopiëren. Is dat goed? Gewoon dat je een beetje op dezelfde dingen bent. Now, one thing that's annoying when I play this video is that once it's played, it's stuck there. We don't see the old image again. We actually want to go back to this scene. So a way that we can do that is we can attach an event listener to the fact that the video has stopped playing. And we do that again by referring to video and then calling this attribute, which is called add event listener. Again, I don't ever type the whole name. I just type the first few letters and then I press enter. And if you open the brackets, you see that it's trying to be helpful with this documentation, but that's not helpful at all. It just looks like garbage. But basically, we want to provide two things. One is, okay, what's the event that you want to listen to? So what happens? Do we click on the video? Do we wait for it to end? Is it when the video has started? Is it when the video has loaded? So there's a bunch of things that you can listen for. And then, okay, what do we do once that event is done? So the first thing that we need to do is a string, this text. And that's called ended. And that gets called when the video has reached its end, so at the end of the video. And the second parameter with a comma is going to be, okay, what's the function that you want to happen? So what do you want to have happen at the end of the video? And for this, we're actually going to make a function that's just inside of this thing. We can also make a second function, which is like go back to whatever, but we're just going to do it in line. And the way that the brackets and so look is a bit funky, but just bear with me. So first we're going to open and close the brackets. And then after that, we're going to write an equal sign and a larger than sign. So like which is called a fat arrow. And then we're going to open up these brackets and then press enter. And so this creates what's called an anonymous function, a function that doesn't have a name, but that just executes, that just sits there and waits for something that happens when the video has ended. Because we can't write the code here immediately, because then it would immediately execute the code. It's basically code in waiting, code that is there, but that's passive until the video has actually ended, and then it can start doing these things. So what does that code need to do? Well, it just needs to flip these two around. So our image style, the display for it now needs to be block. And you can copy that from here if you want to. And then the video style display needs to be hidden again, so none. I just type it out in full, but you probably want to copy and paste that. So it's basically flipping these things around, right? So before the video was hidden, now the image is hidden. Try to, well, you can type it over and look at it, but really try to understand what's going on here, right? We're just playing with these HTML elements on the page, making them appear and disappear whenever we need. That's really what we're trying to do here. And then if you play it, we get the video.
This used to be called the Valley of the Sparrows. It's had a name change recently.
Yeah, and so once the video is done, it swaps back to the image. And now we can click it again and we get that same video again. Yes. Valley of the Sparrows. Everybody with me? This is already a bit of code, so do you understand what's going on in this piece of code? A little bit. Try to go through it line by line again. So it's actually triggered by this on-click event in this specific area. So remember, this is actually a link now that's going to this place where the sign is. That's our link. If we click that, we call this function play video, and that function is going to first select the image and the video elements, which are, remember, are already there, but the player doesn't know that. We hide the image by setting its display style to none, and we show the video by setting its display style to block. That's just showing the video, but doesn't automatically play it. And then we call video.play to actually play it. And then while it's playing, we add this event listener that's going to listen for an event ended, so when the video is ended. And then we call this new function, which is this block, which is an anonymous function, so it doesn't have a name yet, or it doesn't need a name. And that's going to flip these around. So it's going to set the image back to block and the video back to none. Okay, with me so far? All right, and so this is really how we are going to make our entire game, is basically by attaching these really simple event handlers, or really simple, these event handlers to the page and doing something in interaction to what the player is doing. Now, I just want to go to the lighthouse, and then I want to show the other approach, because I need some time to explain that as well. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the lighthouse, so click here. And then for the lighthouse, I also need an image map. So initially, I'm going to make a copy of a page like this one, for example, the vultures gone HTML page. So I copy this page and I'll call it lighthouse.html. And the link for the media is going to be lighthouse. And then the image map, so that goes to this page, and then the image map needs to be a bit different. So I want to talk about that as well. So for the image map, and I hope you see that there's now, you see a system appearing, because it's going to be very similar for each of the elements. What I want to do is basically be able to go back to the vultures. Remember, if we didn't scare away our vulture, there's still something for us left to do. So I'm going to make a link here to the door of the lighthouse, because I want to be able to click that, and actually make it a bit wider, because I want to be, this is sort of the region where I can click. And then below the lighthouse, I'm going to make another, so maybe I should name this also. So this is going to be lighthouse-door.html. And then below that, I'm going to make another one. So this a whole strip, basically. I'll click on it so you can see. They can't overlap because that doesn't work. But this whole strip at the bottom is, if I click there, then I actually go back to my vultures. So this is going to go to, and this is where the problem appears now, vultures-gone.html. But of course, we don't know if the vulture is gone yet, because you can also click at the moment that the vulture is still there. So now we run into trouble, and then I want to highlight that as well. All right, so we have that image map. We can copy that image map. Again, remember the parts that you want to copy. If you already have the image, you don't need to copy that part. You just need to copy the map. So I paste the new map here. And then that should put me on the lighthouse. And now I can go back to the vultures, go down the path, go back up, and then click on the door. And then I need to do the next one, right? All right. Okay, so everybody with me? Any questions at this point? No? So you see that you can sort of make a whole game this way, right? So this is really, the other pages are just more of the same. So the first version that I made, the HTML version, is just more of the same approach. But now I want to cover a bit of the problems with this approach, and one of them you already saw, which is the fact that it doesn't remember state at all. It doesn't know if you've attacked the vulture or if the vulture attacked you, or if the stone is gone, or all of that thing. It doesn't have any concept of that. So to introduce these concepts, what we need to do is we need to have a way to manage that state. And we could do it manually by using cookies, as I talked about before. But a better approach is to use a framework. And that's not just useful here, but it's useful in other scenarios as well. That's why I want to cover it. And the framework that we're going to use is called Vue.js, which is this one. There is actually a version 2 that you see here, but there's also a newer version called version 3, which is the one that we'll be using. So at the top, you can see, you can click here for the version 3 documentation. And now you go to v3.vue.js.org. It's really important to actually get the new one because the old one works a bit differently. Oh, sorry, the link is vue.js.org. And then here at the top, you can see, click here for the version 3, and then the link should be v3.vue.js.org. There's actually a really, really good tutorial on Vue.js here. So if you click the, you don't have to do it now, but later, if you click the why Vue.js.
Creating modern web applications.
Yeah, there's an explanation of why you would use Vue.js. How long is it? We probably want to watch that as well. But then here, we'll watch that together. But here, there's also a link to the Vue Mastery's free Intro to Vue course, which is a free course that you can follow that explains what Vue.js is and does. I'm just going to go very briefly over what we want to do, but this is really a nice way to do, because a lot of the situations that you come in whenever you're working with the web actually are solved in a framework like Vue. Yeah, so maybe that's not really what we're looking for here. It's just highlighting the reasons, but it doesn't tell you what the problem is actually trying to solve. So to get started, what we are going to do is we're just going to make in our folder here, we're going to make another page that has nothing to do with this, but we're just going to do it just to show you how it works. So we're going to make a new page. And what I'm going to do here is call that page greeting.html. And I'm going to write an exclamation mark again to have that start of the page, and I can press enter. The title of the document is going to be greeting. And here for our body, and now this is where Vue.js comes in, we're going to write our page. So basically what we want to do is we want the name of the, we want like a greeting message and a hello message, but we want it to be dynamic or something. So the data comes from somewhere else. Imagine that you're logged into a web page. Again, this is sort of a fake example, but you're logged into a web page and now you want to greet that person. So you want to say, welcome Ezra, welcome Kato, depending on who's logged in. But that doesn't work in HTML because we don't know. So we can write welcome, but then what comes here, we don't know. And so this is what Vue.js is solving for us, because it's basically allowing us to fill in the blanks. It's giving us a templating system, a way that we can specify things that need to be part of that page. So we can write here, welcome. And then we can write these double brackets like this. And then we can write a variable that we're going to define later. So we'll call it here first name, because that's going to be the first name of the person that I want to address. All right, so if we now open that page again with live server, view command palette, open with live server, we just see this, right? There's no magic here. We didn't include Vue.js yet, so we are expecting just to see this initial page. Of course, why would we see anything else? It's just showing what we want to show. The interesting part of Vue.js is that it now can start replacing these things. So the first thing that we need is to actually include that script of Vue.js into the page. And the way that we do that is after our title attribute, we're going to write script. And then we can see that we can also select your script source. So we are selecting that one. Again, there's no magic. It just adds this source attribute to the page. And now we're going to refer to the version of Vue that we want to refer to. Remember, we're using version 3. And the link is, or it makes it really easy to link. We just write https://unpackage, which is unpkg.com, Vue.js, add version 3. So with this link, we just included this whole framework. So this is all we need to include Vue.js on our page. And if we open our Explorer or our console, we should actually see that it's waiting for unpackage here, right? And now it's not working. Why is it not working? Wait, I have to cheat a little bit by looking at my page. Is it just Vue? It's just Vue, sorry. So not Vue.js, but just Vue, even shorter. And then what you should see in the console, so please, when you're doing that, open the console, you should see that it says you're running a development build of Vue. Make sure to use the production build when deploying for production. So this is what we expect to see here in our console. All right. And now comes the part where we actually make this application. I'm going to go refer to the documentation. So this is when you're in the documentation, you can look at the examples that they make here. But basically, we're going to make an app. So after our h1, we're going to make a script tag. And that script tag is going to be our app. So we're going to write const app equals, and then we open brackets. And this part is going to look really funky. That's the part that you really have to sort of put yourself over to understand the whole thing. But it's really what makes Vue powerful. So Vue can actually remember state. So the state that it needs to remember is this first name, right? It has to know where that comes from. So we're going to write the data attribute. So we're going to provide a data and look at the way that it's written. So data is actually a function that's inside of app that looks like this. Again, I'm not a big fan of this syntax, but that's the way it's written. And then we say return, and we open up brackets again. And now we can specify what the data actually needs to be. So now we can say, okay, the first name, colon is, and then you can write your first name, Frederick, for example. Well, actually, if I do this, Prettier will actually turn them into double quotation marks, but there's no distinction in JavaScript between the two. It doesn't really matter. So this is a function. So basically, you can think of it as like function data. This is a function that Vue expects in your app that actually returns the data for it. So it expects that every time it asks for the data, it's going to get a copy of that data back. So that's why it's a function. So your app has, the way you can think of it is you have a sort of like a contract with Vue where it says, okay, you provide me with the data and with the things like the events, for example, that need to happen in your page, and I'm just going to handle all the rest for you. So that's the contract. So I have to make a function that's called data that returns the data to Vue, all the data that I want to give it. And so that allows it to render these things, so it knows that it needs to highlight these things. This one? Yeah, so this is, if I don't do this, it's not treating it as a function. It's a function with no arguments, basically. So there are functions that actually take arguments and we put these between brackets. But because I don't have any arguments, the brackets are just empty. But if I don't do it, it doesn't know that it's a function. Again, the syntax is a bit weird. I just copy and paste from the documentation. I always forget. And then I have to do this last step, which is to create the app. So this doesn't actually create an app. It just makes data, a data structure that is like completely separate from Vue. It doesn't know that yet. So now we do Vue after that with an uppercase V, Vue dot create app. And note that autocomplete doesn't help us here because Vue is not part of the standard of HTML. So it doesn't know that we're actually dealing with Vue here. Create app. And now I can say, what's the app object here, which is called app as well. So this refers to this variable that I now created. All right, so that creates the app, and now it has to what's called mount the app. So I have to say where the app is going to be mounted. And mounting basically means which part of the page is controlled by view. You could use, in this case, you could use body to indicate the whole page. But what I'm going to do, because I'm also going to do that in minutes for the other page, is I am going to wrap this in a main element. So I make a main here and put that h1 inside. And then I'm going to in mount, actually between my brackets here, refer to main as the element that I want to mount the page in. And now if all goes well, I would actually see welcome Frederick instead of welcome brackets first name. Okay, and then you can write how's the weather in and then city. And then city I can fill in like Antwerp. And then it's going to say, well, what's the weather in wherever you are.
Bij mij staat er helemaal niks meer.
Oké, wacht. Michel, kun je je console open doen om te zien of je errors krijgt?
Ja, nee, daar staat ook niks.
En je pagina is gewoon leeg.
Ja.
Wacht, anders moet je even je scherm delen.
Oh nee, wacht. Ik denk dat dat aan mijn internet ligt. Het is nog aan het laden, denk ik. Kan dat?
Die unpackage link.
Ik weet het niet.
Dat kun je zien als er iets mis is met je internet hier in een tab network. Kun je dat zien. Dus als je nu refresh doet, dan zie je waar dat Vue.js eigenlijk allemaal gaat laden. Dus dan zie je normaal de HTML, Vue, Vue 3.02, Vue Global en dan dit WS-ding. Dus dat zou je normaal moeten te zien krijgen.
Ik heb alleen greeting.html en view at 3.
Ah ja. En de link klopt. Het is echt zo geschreven. Want ik heb hem er juist Vue.js geschreven per ongeluk, maar het is eigenlijk gewoon zo. En wat gebeurt er als je naar die pagina gaat? Dus als je nu hierop met Ctrl-klik doet en dan open, krijg je dan dit te zien.
Welk? Ja, dat krijg ik te zien.
Wat je dan ook kunt doen, is gewoon deze link kopiëren. En in plaats van deze link, die er gewoon in zetten. Zo. In zijn geheel. Ik weet niet wat dat veel verschil gaat maken, want dat zou in principe hetzelfde moeten zijn.
Er staat zowel dat het me aan het verbinden is, maar...
Oei. Dat is waar. En ook als je refresht, blijft dat staan.
Ah, nee, het is veranderd. Ja, het zal misschien wel iets met die... Ik heb juist nog eens gerefreshed. Het zal toch met die link te maken hebben dan.
Ja. En krijg je het ook juist te zien met welkom, Michel?
Ja.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Amazing. So this seems like a very simple thing, but it's actually quite powerful because there are a couple of the examples on the website, for example, is they make this idea of a counter where you have this data thing. And then what it does is it's basically updating the page by calling this counter function over and over again. And so it's increasing this counter. But there's much more that we can do as well. We can bind attributes. So the moment that we mouse over a certain string, something can be dynamic. We can add event listeners to our page. So there's lots of options for doing dynamic elements. The way that we are going to use Vue is we're basically going to include all of our scenes, so all of the things that we made already. We're going to include these in our page as different sections, as different parts. So it's basically going to be one page where all the scenes are linked up with their image maps. And what Vue is going to do is the moment that we click, instead of we go into another page, what it's going to do is it's going to call an event called Go. So that's a name that I invented. And it's going to go from scene to scene. And basically all the scenes are hidden until we show them. So that's the idea. So Vue allows us, and this is also a really powerful concept, to hide or show a certain element. So for example, here, we can, maybe this is already a good example, we can do, we can add to this H1 an extra attribute. And so view works with these custom attributes called v-show. And here we can say false, for example. And now what happens is that this element has now disappeared because we set v.show, which is not something that HTML knows about, but it's something for view specific, where it says, well, the value of that is false. Now, that's not very useful, but we could do this in response to something else, or we can do this like, for example, here we can make another thing in our data where it says show greeting. That's a variable that we created, and we set it to false, or we set it to true. Let's set it to true. And now we can say for v-show, we can say, well, the fact that we are showing this element depends on this variable, on this data element called show greeting. So now if we set that to true, we can see our greeting, but if we set it to false, then our greeting is hidden because we don't want that to see. Yeah, check the name, because if the names are different, for example, if I do make a mistake here, then it's not going to find show greeting, and it's also not going to show it. And you get a warning here. It says property show greeting was accessed, but it's not defined. So that's basically indicating like you're referring to something that I don't know about. We can also do that in response to an event, and that's also important. That's why I want to cover this as well. Is in our H1, we can say, well, the moment that we click on this greeting, then I want to hide it. So, and the way that I'm going to do this is after my show greeting here, I'm going to type @click equals, and then now I'm going to invent a function. Again, I don't have that function yet, but I'm just going to invent it. Give me a second. And that function is going to be called hide greeting. Now, as I said, I don't have that function. So if I click here, I get an error, the same error as I saw before with the play video, like it doesn't know what the function is. But we can make that function here. So we have this in our app, we have our block here for the data. We can also have a block for the events, as it's called, or methods, sorry. So here we can write methods, colon, and now we can open a bracket, and here we can write all the names of the methods. Note that it's written a bit differently than data, unfortunately. So here we write hide greeting, which is the name of our method. We again do brackets, empty brackets to indicate that it doesn't take any parameters. And now here we can decide, okay, what does hide greeting actually do? So the moment that we click, well, what should it do? It should put this show greeting thing to false. And then by putting that to false, it immediately makes it visible. Now, a way to refer to its own is to use this word called this. So this basically means refer to myself. I want to take the show greeting element or variable on my own app object, and I want to set that to false. And now if you click the greeting, it should disappear.
Is there a reason that sometimes there's a space on Amazon that equals space that equals something?
No. Like this, you mean?
Yeah.
No. And you see that I just let it format with prettier, it's just going to format it. So even if I remove the spaces, it doesn't really matter. Where it does matter is with the fat arrow. So if I use this, I can't write it like this. It means something else. Yes, I know. Yeah, this is very JavaScript specific, and that's because methods here, or the way that this is set up, is it's actually an object. And so this comma means, you can think of it as a list. This comma means, okay, there's other, or there can be other functions or methods also in the same object. So you can think of this methods thing as a list of all the methods that will be available. So in a minute in our larger app, we have a couple of these methods. We have a go method, we have a find section method, we have a play video. And so all of these are different methods on our object here. Yeah.
But on the column,
So here,
still works.
this one? Yeah, yeah. So semicolons in general in JavaScript are not required, but Prettier will add them for me if I see it. Does it do it in your case as well?
No.
What you could try to do, Kato, is also go to View, Command Palette, and then choose Format Document, and see if Prettier picks it up. And then if it asks there are multiple formatters, then you can click and then choose Prettier. Also, what you want to check here at the bottom is where it says Prettier, is that you have this set and it checked, so that there's a checkbox. It doesn't do anything. Wacht, ik ook even erop zien.
Right now, it's did a announcement.
En als je het report ja, het is hier. Dat is wel een indicatie. Ja, en dat is in de plaats. Die koers. En nu kan ik het zo doen. Dus je desktop, dat is een goede indicatie.
En nu zit hier dan zelf ook
ja, informatie. Nu gaan we dus zelf formatting doen.
Dus aan de picture niet werkt, dan is je
ja, dat is normaal niet doen. Dat wordt in principe missie dat we de eerste geïnstalleerd en dat Wenn Sie überhaupt nicht wissen, dann muss En als je dan inderdaad in gaat, dan zit je wel spatie. Als je een spatie waar spatie is. Ah ja, dus een format hebben. Ja, ik denk dat je, er zit een standaard format erin, ik denk dat je die aan het gebruiken bent, maar ik weet niet of je switcht tussen het. Bij mij werkt het ook. Yes. All right. So why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this to do our big scene. So we're going to make a new document that's basically going to include all of the scenes themselves. It's right here. Yeah. Just quickly. Ja, wel. Dus dat moeten we normaal kunnen kiezen. Wacht, hè, als je dit doet, kun je kiezen Format Document Width. Dus ik ga naar View, Command Palette en dan Format. En dan staat Prettier hier tussen. Maar normaal kun je je default formatter kiezen. En dat is eigenlijk het punt, dat je daar kunt kiezen voor Prettier. Tja, en check eens even dat dat hier bij de extensies inderdaad staat. Ja, andere kleuren. Ah ja, ja, ik heb er een aantal extra, dat is. Wacht. Nee, wat met je staat is niet. uninstall and reinstall. En als het normaal is, en zou het kunnen dat je een oude versie hebt van de dat komt je zitten wel heel uit. Ah ja, ja, deze oude. Ja, ik denk dat deze wel heel oud is. Ja, alles exact hetzelfde. Het beste wat je kunt doen is gewoon nog een nieuwe versie aannemen, versie 3. En gewoon in je applications komen opkuisen. Sorry dat ik het niet zie. Nee, we bedoelen gewoon dat je weet, nu heb ik de laatste versie. Zo'n blauw ja. Ja, dat moet echt updaten, denk ik, want het is echt wel beter geworden. I improved. Alright, ja, we gaan nog wel voort moeten doen, want we hebben nog wel werk. Dus what we gaan doen is, so what we're going to do is we're going to take our title.html and basically we're going to make a copy of that. And then rename that to index.html because this is our actual game. The old approach that we want to do is still valid. I still think it's awesome and it works. But now we're going to take this one file, this index.html that just contains all of the different scenes. So the first thing that we need to do is write out, as we did from the greeting, is copy that script to Vue.js. So you can copy and paste that from your other page. I called it index.html. Because that's our home page, right? And then I'm going to, after our style sheet link, I'm going to link that to Vue.js. So probably you have something where it looks like this, which is also fine. And then in our main, what we're going to do is we're going to basically make a couple of sections. So remember our first thing that we want to do is we want to have our image here with the title, and then we want to link to our scene of the vultures. And there already we're going to see a difference between the two. So in main, what I'm going to do is make a section tag. I'm going to also check my notes to make sure that I'm actually typing it right. And then here I'm going to avoid this link because I don't need links anymore because I can just click on the image. I can add an event on the image as I did before. And that event is going to take me to the next element. And I can do the same for image maps. So I'm going to make a section, put an image inside of there. And then inside of that image, let's see how I'm going to do that. Yeah, I'm going to immediately add my click event. So I'm going to do add click equals. And then here I'm going to invent a function that doesn't exist yet. That function is going to be called go. And here I use brackets. And here I have to use single quotes to indicate the scene where I want to go. So remember, this is a scene. I'm going to give that a name in a minute. But then if I click on the title, I want to go to a new scene, and that new scene is going to be called vulture. So before we used HTML, basically hyperlinks, here we're just going to refer to them by names, and these names we're going to invent ourselves. Right, and then for our vultures page, what we're going to do here is we're going to make another section. And then here for that image, we're going to actually go to vultures. Vultures-vulture.jpg. So that's the image with the vulture appearing. And here the image, we can't click it. So we remove that click handler here. Now I have two sections now. So if I open this with live server, I actually see the two images below each other. That makes sense because they're just appearing as they would. But now, and this is the main trick or the main system that I want to show you, is that it's like a magic trick a little bit. We make all the sections that you want to go initially, and we just turn them on and off whenever that's needed. That's basically the magic trick, right? Everything's already there. The magician, the rabbit is already in the hat. It's just that we don't show it yet. That's basically what we're doing. So, and the same thing will happen in the vulture for me. It's both there and gone already. It's in this quantum state, and we can choose between these different states. So, as before, we're also going to link to view. So, right before our body, we're going to make a script tag here. And here we're going to do the same thing as before with our view app. So we're going to write const app equals with our brackets. We are going to write data with brackets. And again, the same syntax here. And now we're going to return. And there's one important thing that's here right now, and that's the name of the scene. So we're going to make a variable attribute, whatever you call it, and then that has the name title. So that is basically an indication that we have a scene, and the first scene, the current scene, basically the scene that we're now on, the active one, is the one is title. That's the one we start with, right? And basically our game is going to change this variable to something else, and then it's going to traverse to different scenes. That's what this go function is going to do for us. So, right, so we have a scene called title, and now let's have view actually work for us by doing this view.create app, and then mount that to, and then with quotes, main. This is similar to what we had in the greeting example that I showed. I'm going to go back. I'm also going to put my console on because I fully expect there to be errors and things that go wrong because I made a mistake in typing or something like that. So if there's something wrong, please tell me, because that's probably what needs to happen now. And now that's the key part. Now we can hide and show sections based on these names. So now here what we're going to say for each section is we're going to add this v-show attribute. And what's the condition where it needs to show this section? Well, it only shows it if the scene is equal to the name of that specific scene. So this section is the title scene. So here I can write if the scene equals, and then single quotes title. Note that I have these single quotes and double quotes right after each other. So I'll highlight it so you can see. So if the scene is title, then I want to show this attribute. And here as well, if I do v.show, if the scene equals vultures, then I want to show this scene. Right, so this scene appears when the scene is called title, and this scene appears when the scene is called vultures. If all goes well, we should only see the title scene now. We don't see the vulture scene. And please stop me if there's something that you don't see or it goes wrong. Where? So what you want to have happen is no errors, first off. And then here you want to see the title and not the other scene. So, and if it goes wrong, what you see is that you see the two below each other here. Okay. now we want to implement our Go, so basically our hyperlinks.
Bij mij werkt er ook nog iets niet. Ik krijg een error.
Ah ja. Ja, dat is heel moeilijk te debuggen, Michel. Dus ik ga je weer vragen van dat gewoon van niet te kopiëren, van Discord te kopiëren. Ik heb een stukje code in Discord gezet. Werkt dat voor u? Michel? Dat is zo raar.
Nee, het werkt niet.
Nee.
Nee.
Ook niet met de code die ik u gegeven heb.
Ja.
Huh? En wat werkt er juist niet?
Ik krijg titel.html error not found.
Ah ja, maar je moet hier naar index.html. Want de pagina die we nu gemaakt hebben heet index.html. Dus je moet echt zien dat je op de juiste pagina staat. Je kunt gewoon op die pagina gaan staan in een view, command palette, live server. En dan kom je normaal op de juiste pagina terecht.
Ah ja, oké. Dan werkt het wel precies.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Go is not a function. So we do the same thing as we did before. After data, we're going to write methods, colon, and then open brackets. And now we're going to make that function Go. And this function actually does take a input. So it does take what it needs to go to. And did I give it a name? Scene. Yeah. So it takes in the name of that scene. And then what it's going to do, so inside of that function, we're going to say what it needs to do. And what I like to do now is basically log out so give me some debugging information so I know that I'm going from one scene to another. So I'm going to write console.log. And now I use a backtick. So this character, I'm not sure. Yes, no idea. Ah, ja. Mag dat er niet af met Brexit en zo? And then we're going to write moving to scene, and then we write $sign and then open these curly braces again, scene. ... So this piece of text is just going to print in our console that we're moving to another scene. And then we're actually going to do that. So we're going to write this.scene equals scene. So this basically, before we did that as well, we refer to this.show greeting. This means we're going to change that scene, and this scene, the name here, this one actually comes from Go. Ja, de haakjes zijn super irritant. I know. And so what should happen if you refresh the page is that you should go to your index, you click here, and then you should go to the vulture. Yeah, $, and then open the. So this is just for debugging, yeah? But this allows me to see if I click here that it says moving to scene vulture. So I can actually see where I move to. That actually makes it easier to debug. Ja, je kunt ook smileys doen misschien. All right. And does it work if you click? Do you actually go to another scene? Yeah. So this is pretty cool because we didn't actually have to manually turn on elements and hide elements and show elements. We just used Vue.js to basically do that management for us. And now we can also do it with the vulture because we have to sort of look at the time. You see there's much more code that I wanted to show you, but yeah, time. And that's what I want to show you is that I actually have two images here, or I'm going to do it in a different way actually. So I'm going to click the vulture, And then if I click the vulture, it's going to disappear. Let's forget about the attack animation, but just make it disappear here. So I'm going to make another section. And that section is going to be vultures gone. So it's basically a copy of the previous one, but it's the one where the vulture is gone. And now you see that if I click on the scene, I actually get the two. So I get the one with the vulture, and then below that, which I can't fully see, I get the one where the vulture is gone. Right? So, and basically that's the trick. So they're both the same scene, only there's a different part of the state. And that's part of the state that we don't have yet, which is the vulture gone or not? So within our data attribute, we are going to keep a list of things that can happen in our game as well, not just the scene, but also things that are happening. So here we can write vulture, yeah, just call it vulture. And then we set it to true. So initially the vulture is there. So we want to set the vulture to 2. And now we can show the sections based on whether the vulture is there or not. So you can write scene equals vultures. And that's what this double ampersand means and. So there's 2 parts of the condition. This needs to be true and this other part needs to be true, and vulture. So if the scene is vultures and the vulture is there, we actually show the one where the animal is. And then here for the second scene, we do the same thing, only we use an exclamation mark in front to flip around the condition. So this basically means this is what happens if the vulture is there. This is what happens if the vulture is not there. So now we click, and now we see only the scene with the vulture. And now we have to find a way to actually get the scene where the vulture is gone, right? Ja, je haakjes en zo, dat die zich dan nog doen. Let erop, Fien, als je scene title schrijft, dat je hierachter ook een komma hebt.
Ja.
Hier kun je geen punt komma zetten.
Bij mij is er ook iets fout met die haakjes, denk ik, bij moving to scene.
Ja.
Maar ik weet eigenlijk niet juist waar.
Wacht, mag ik terug een stukje code doorsturen? Nee. Je moet dit zien. Maar het hangt ervan af. Als vulture op false staat, dan is hem er niet. En dus nu als ik klik, dan is hem er niet. En als het op true staat, dan is hem er niet. Dat is het punt. Dat is... Merk op dat terwijl we aan het ontwikkelen zijn, so while we're developing, we can also set that scene. We don't have to set it to title initially. We can actually be in our game wherever we want. So we can set our scene as we're developing to vultures. And so now if we load our page, we immediately go here, right? Because this is the state of our game, right? And as we make our game more complex, we get more state. We also get an inventory and things like that. But this is the full state of our game. So by changing this, we can actually change where we are in the game and what the state is. So is the villager angry for us? Did we decapitate the mayor? Is the bomb exploded yet? Did we find the damsel in distress? All of these things can be set as parts of our state in the game. That's really important. So this is all now centralized. It's not spread around the game everywhere. It's just centralized. And what this thing is doing is basically feeding off that data and saying, okay, this can only be shown if we're at the scene of the vulture and the vulture is gone, then we show this image. If the vulture is still there, we show this image. So this is really powerful concept, even though it's now very tiny, or the thing we do is not very big, but the concept is really powerful. All right, and now we actually want to scare away the vulture. So here, when we click on the vulture, actually, we want to use an image map here as well. So what I'm going to do for our image map, I'm going to go to vultures.html. And remember, we had our image map here. So we are going to copy that image map here. So at vultures.html, we're going to copy that image map because we want to use that same image map in our index.html. And we're going to add that after our image. Remember, in our first block here, so the first block with the vulture, we're going to copy that in. Now there's a couple of things that we need to do to make that image map work, because this image map is now working that way that it automatically goes to the next page. We don't want it to go to a page. We actually want it to stay in our page, but actually change something. So in our image, the first thing that we are going to do is remove this alt tag, and we're just going to write use map equals, and then put a hashtag. And now we can refer to the image map, but the name of the image map here needs to be vultures.vulture. And here, that name of the image map also needs to be vulture.vulture. And the reason is that every image map has to have a unique name. So before, it didn't really matter that the name was just image map, because we only had one on the page. But now we're working with multiple scenes in one page and multiple image maps. So we actually have to refer to a different name here. The alt attributes here and the title attributes, and we can remove. For our area, again, really the important part is these coordinates. And then for the href, and this is actually the part where I really want to be. Yeah, so here when I click on the vulture, I actually want it to be gone. I will skip the attacking part, but here what I'm going to do is I'm going to write @click equals, and here I'm going to do two things. I want to go to the actually to the same scene, to vultures again, but I also want to hide the vultures. And actually, because I'm going to the same page, all I want to do basically here is set the vulture equals false. And that's going to hide the vulture for me. And so the href here can go away. We don't really care about it. And then if we click the lighthouse, what we can do here is also say click equals go to the lighthouse. Again, note all the different quotes, and also the href can go away. So the href is just there. I just left it there just so I can refer to the name, so I know that which image area actually refers to which part. And now, ideally, if I click the vulture, it's gone. Does this work? Oh, interesting. Maybe it's a better skill. Yeah. Wacht, als je daar deze scene is gewoon een title. De image map is en dan de use map is ook weer de image. Ja. En precies dat van. Nu zeg gewoon dat is language is. Er is bij u het wel een ambiance dat je hier de vultures hebt. En dat je dan ineens daar staat. Dat mag ik anders. Ja, dat is niet heel dat je geen vultures doen. De reden is dat we niet zien. En dan kan ik hier ook iets anders doen. Nee, we hebben niets meer. Yeah, so the entire code of the entire game, which is much more complex, of course, is there. You can see it, and I don't want to go through your entire time, but really, there's a lot of variation on what I just showed. So this is the vulture when it's gone. You see what it does is it goes here to the attack thing, and then the attack is also just a section that just contains the image. Now the attack is a bit different here because the click actually does two things, and this is the thing that we just did, vulture equals false. And then I write semicolon, and then it says go vulture. So the attack is sort of, the attack thing is sort of a scene in between the two scenes. So the vulture is not gone immediately. And so you can have multiple things happening when you click. So you can remove the vulture, and then you can go back to that vulture space, and now it's there. So this is actually a nice thing to try out, just to see how it works. And then all the sections work the same way. So the vulture sign works the same way as before. The area also uses play video, just as we wrote before. The lighthouse, we haven't done that yet, but it's also linking to the door. So all of the other things are there. There's a couple of extra methods that we haven't seen yet. One is play video, which is very similar to what we done before. The only thing it's because we use it on multiple places, it's more generic. It looks at the thing you clicked on, and then it looks at, okay, where's the video and where's the image based on what you clicked at. So you click on an area, then it's going to look for a tag, a video tag and an image tag that's near the element that you clicked on. And then it can hide the image, show the video, play the video, and then flip them around if you want. And then there's also this interesting thing, which I probably should show at the very end. And so I'll show the live version of the game or the final version of the game. So I can click through, click the lighthouse, go here, go to the shop. And then here, that's the part where the inventory comes up. So before we didn't really know about inventory, we have some state with a vulture, but here we really have to think about the inventory. So whenever we take these things. So this is also an interesting thing, I think, because here we have the shop register, and we see that we have 4 images here, but only one image is shown at the same time, because here the images also have this vShow thing. And so what I have in my app next to my scene and my vulture is I also have a bag. And in my bag, I have coins and I have tickets. Well, I don't have them yet because I only get them the moment that I enter them. So here with vShow, what I do is, well, if I show the register is full, if I don't have the bag or if I don't have the coins and the tickets yet, the register is still full. So I show this image. And if I have the coins and the tickets, I show that the register is empty. Does that make sense? And if I have just the coins and not the tickets, well, I show the register still has a ticket. So it's sort of, it messes a little bit with your head because it's sort of the other way around. But this is the way that you set that up. And so then I have a function called take, which takes the coins, and take, which takes the tickets. That's also an image map. So an image around this region of the map where I can click this part and this part. And then what take does is it's just one line where it says, well, go inside of the bag, take the item, and now set the item to true because you've now taken it. So now instead of saying that the coins is set to false, then the coins will be true, basically indicating that you now have the coins, which means that later on, if you need the coins in the game somewhere, then you can actually use those, right? So that's how the inventory works. Again, it's really short because there's a lot of concepts at the same time. There's a very simple way, which is just linking the HTML pages together. But I think this approach is nice to see because it starts from the same principle, but it shortens the code significantly because it's much faster to make this. I made this in, I think, an hour or 2 or so to do the whole game. Once I've done the image maps, it's actually really fast to go through each of the scenes and do them this way. And as you can see, the bigger your game is, the more fun it is to play because there's just a huge amount of things that you can actually explore and play around with. And that really makes it interesting to play with this game and go inside. And yeah. So there's so much stuff. So there's so much stuff that you can explore just by making this very simple approach. So in December, I really want to go a little bit deeper into Vue.js because we now sort of went over it really quickly, but it's a super interesting system while still being, I think, somewhat understandable and and easy to use once you get used to the way that it works. So what I would suggest is that you try to go through the code here and understand what it's doing, and trying to follow along. If you click here, like, okay, what can I do from this scene? So now I'm in Lighthouse Inside, for example. Okay, now what can I do, or what can I see? Or now am I in Lighthouse Password, which is the one that I just saw. Okay, what happens if I click? Oh, it says play video, and then it does something. Right? Oh yeah. Yeah, good question. So if I go, it's so fun to actually go through the city here. I really like it. So if I go here, I'm now at the school. So this scene, and I just have this image of the school, and I use this map. Again, this is very similar to what I did before, and now all the areas of the map actually are click events. So there's a bunch of things that I can click. I can click outside to actually go back. And the bell actually is the thing that brings me inside. But if I try to click the door, I actually get this message here. And so this is another function that I made, where it just calls this function called toast. So I can look at methods here, and it says toast here. And this uses this library called Toastify. And to use it, what I did is I went to their website, Toastify.js. I looked at the documentation. And then I looked at, okay, I have to include a style sheet. So I copy pasted that style sheet. I had this script that I also had to include. So I also included it here. And then I looked at, okay, how does it work? And which is basically this, but I made it much shorter because I don't need all the options. I just needed the text, the position, and then a background color. And then I use show toast. So it works the same way. It's a function or a method that I provide that takes in a message. I pass that message along to Toastify because that's going to show me the message. And then I set the position and set the background color and do show toast. And this works for everything. So if I want to say play sound, for example, and I have like a sound file, then I can also do whatever. I think it's like new audio sound file play that's built into the browser. And now I can play audio at some point because once I have the file. So it's really convenient to use existing libraries or to use things that are already built into the browser to extend your game and make it more complex and add more features to it. Again, you can make this much more complex if you want to use something like Unity, for example, where it's really a game engine and you make it into a game and then you can do more interactivity. But what I like about this approach is that it's very simple conceptually to understand what's going on. You're just moving from scene to scene, and these scenes can do whatever they want. And of course, you can make them interactive. You can add animation, but initially they can be very simple, and then you can start adding things on top, which is also how all of these things are made, right? They're just, you sketch them out first, and then you add details, or you fill them in with details to make the world feel more alive. In Return to Zork, for example, if there's like a water stream as well, which you don't see, which is this one, and then that moves, so there's like an animation of the water stream that actually plays. So this can be a video as well. So instead of just being a static image, you can put a video on loop. That's just, your scene is basically like a looping video. So there's all kinds of things that you can do, or all kinds of tricks that you can do to make it more, to feel the world more alive. And you can also make it bigger than 640 by 480, but I kind of like the look. All right. Was that useful? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing.